Um, Alex, please let Reza to come in.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Camilla. Hey.
Hello.
Good morning.
Yeah, Reza.
Hi, good morning. How are you, Alex?
Hey,
How's
Alex.
everybody?
Hello.
I'm good.
Hello, everyone.
Good morning. Good
Hi
morning.
there.
Hi.
Good to see you all.
Good to see a lot of familiar faces.
Hi, everyone.
A lot of new ones here. Hello.
Hi.
Okay, well, it's hey, Krishna.
Hello.
Are you with us?
Hi.
Hey.
I have a problem with my internet connection. Anyway, yeah.
No problem, Krishnan. So it's 9:01 here. We'll get started. So we have a number of different sessions prepared for today. It is a 3-hour-long meeting, but we've broken it down into 3 50-minute meetings, to make it more palatable for our audience here. So please feel free to kind of come in and out and join us for the sessions that you are most excited for. But I strongly encourage you to stay for the whole session if you are available, as there's a lot of great speakers and a lot of great moderators that are joining us. So hello, everyone. I'm for those of you who don't know me, I'm Alex Venuto. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Urban Economy Forum. I just want to give a shout out to Ozan Kakadag there, who's our networking and communication specialist. He'll be your kind of virtual guide today. So if you need any help or kind of direction, Ozan will be our coordinator. And you should all know him already because he has been communicating back and forth with many of you.
Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Ozan. So just as kind of a brief introduction, this is a preparatory meeting for the 4th Urban Economy Forum that's focused on sustainable urban finance. The 4th Urban Economy Forum will be held on October 3rd and 4th of this year, of course. And as I mentioned, it is the 4th iteration, and we began back in 2019. I just want to emphasize a couple of things about the Urban Economy Forum is it really is a place where many different ideas can really bloom and kind of grow. So back in 2019, for an example, the World Urban Pavilion in Regent Park, now powered by Daniels, was kind of one of these ideas that really bloomed and came to life. I'm actually in the pavilion right now in the space, which is a global knowledge exchange hub, where we've presented many different ideas, and there's actually many different events going on today in the space physically. So, I just want to have everyone kind of keep that in mind as we're discussing today and some different ideas and conversations are presented, to really think about how, we can collaborate and move these ideas forward together. And then, of course, we're also looking at how we can connect this conversation here today to the 4th Urban Economy Forum, perhaps through different sessions, different topics. So we are very open-minded in that sense and how we can move forward. And, of course, happy to collaborate with everyone as well. So perhaps I'll stop there and maybe if my colleague Ozan or Krishnan, and then Krishnan, if you just wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah. I just wanted to emphasize what you said, that the Urban Economy Forum is a kind of a virtual and real meeting place for exchange of ideas on sustainable urbanization globally. Now that we are moving towards the 50th anniversary of the first Stockholm conference that was held in 1972, it's being celebrated on June 5th. In a way, as a matter of fact, that was a precursor for the urban issues of sustainability, which then resulted in the establishment of UN Habitat. That's what's important, that this meeting in a way is poised to sort of understand and discuss issues related to urbanization, urban development, and sustainability. So I hope that this preparatory meeting indeed focuses on sustainable urban finance, which is the main theme, so that the 3 themes that we're discussing somehow relates to the theme of the World Urban Economy Forum in October, so that your contributions can feed into the main meeting in October, which will be held in conjunction with the World Habitat Day in October. Yeah. So I suppose, as I say, we would like to have as free exchange as possible. So it's important that the speakers sort of keep the time limit to 5 to 6 minutes if possible, maximum 7 minutes, so that there will be some room for discussion if possible. Thanks again, and looking forward to this fruitful discussion and exchange of ideas that will feed into the Urban Economy Forum's 4th meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Krishnan. So just so everyone knows, Krishnan is the Secretary General of the Urban Economy Forum, and one of our inspiring leaders as well. I do believe Reza, our chair of Urban Economy Forum, would like to say some words as well before we kick off the next session, the first session.
Thank you so much, Alex. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm really happy to see all of you again here at the preliminary session of For Urban Economy Forum. As Alex mentioned, Alex now is in the pavilion, World Urban Pavilion right now. We are excited about new collaboration, new initiative in the World Urban Pavilion with great support of Government of Canada. And I emphasize pavilion is output of first Urban Economy Forum. I believe we need to emphasize about kind of implementation approach and try to create a kind of achievement. We have our resolution we will share with the politicians, and we will try to create this global conversation, and through this dialogue create kind of world cohesion regarding the important concept of sustainable urban economy and sustainable urban finance.
Oh, sorry, Reza, you went mute there.
Sorry. We are, can you hear me?
Yes.
We are trying to create a kind of implementation program based on our discussion, and that's why we approach to different agency, international organization, and government, and we ask them to come and share their practices. I want to use this opportunity and emphasize about one of the major program of the pavilion that's called Canada Frontrunner of Urban SDG. And based on that, we try to introduce Canada as a kind of champion or leader of Sustainable Development Goals, specifically Goals 11, and try to create some specific collaboration with the other UN agency in this regard. You're welcome to share your great idea, and the World Urban Pavilion is your office. Please share any initiative and join us to collaborate toward realizing Sustainable Development Goals. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reza. And with that, I think we can turn it over to Ozan to start the proceedings. So Ozan, please go ahead and kick off the next session for us.
Hello, everyone. Today, we are going to start with session 1, which is Sustainable Urban Finance for Sustainable Urban Development. It's going to run from 9:10 to 10 a.m. Our moderator for this session is Camilla Wien, Lawyer Fellowship at Harvard University and expert in urban design, city planning, and transportation. Camilla Wien has been with us since, I believe, the first forum. She has been a strong supporter, and thank you, Camilla, for that. And I will give the floor to Camilla. I'll also attach the agenda in the chat for everyone.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. And thank you for the introduction. So I just heard some noise in the background, so just probably make sure that everybody is on mute, apart from myself, hopefully, and then the speakers. So what I'm going to do is introduce each speaker just before they speak, rather than everybody at the beginning. So our first speaker is Henk Boeman, and Henk Boeman is I'm very pleased to welcome him, and has recently come to Urban Economy Forum. He's the Secretary General of Metrex, which is, I think, a really exemplary and exciting organization, European organization. It's a network of European metropolitan regions and areas, which includes 47 members that are city regions all over Europe. And he's been expanding this network since he's become Secretary General and is currently developing a research sub-network focusing on metropolitan issues. And before that, he had his own urbanism practice and specialized in the long-term urban change, marrying regeneration with infrastructure interventions. And he has over the years focused on how cities can maximize the socio-economic benefit from rail infrastructure enhancements and improvements. So Henk, over to you, and we will prod you to do it in 5 minutes so we can have some discussion at the end. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Camilla. Thank you very much, everyone, actually, because it's an impressive number of people I see here. And to start with, I even see one of the people who worked in my office. So I'm very proud that he is here, Dominique Tegelbeckers, because, of course, apart from investing in, well, maybe part of investing in sustainable development is, of course, investing in the next generation. And that is exactly what he is, the next generation. I will be gone in a couple of years, and then these people need to take over. Thank you for inviting us to this event as a pre-event to the Urban Economy Forum in October. We are invited to, let's say, to also shape together with everyone here the program of that forum meeting, and it will also coincide with our Metrics Autumn Conference in Amsterdam. So we will also make sure that we establish a link so people can also even live see what we are doing, what we are exchanging on, and what kind of topics are, let's say, on the top of our mind. Maybe to add, Metrics stands for Metropolitan Exchange, Metrics. We exist now for 26 years. We have even now 51 members, so we are growing. That has also something to do with the situation in Ukraine, to be honest. We see more, let's say, neighboring states are being more interested, let's say, in linking better to Europe. You can a little bit imagine, maybe. Our conference is, our network covers about 125 million inhabitants. And I say that not to be proud of all these numbers. Let's say it is important to see that working on that level of metropolitan regions, you can also reach out to a lot of people. Let's say not only governments or authorities, but of course also the people in the streets, the people who finally have also to be part of that sustainable move we have to make in the world. Let's say one of the most important elements in Metrics is the what we call the metropolitan attitude, the will to collaborate, to share knowledge and experience, and that's exactly what we do here. And we focus very much on the how to do. So not so much questioning why, because I think we all know why we need to do these things, but questioning more or less about how to do. And 5 minutes is very short, so I will also be short, but also rather open the door than give all kind of solutions that, of course, also I, as Secretary General, don't have. In urban development, we face all huge challenges, and I don't have to repeat that here, I think. But to name one, and originally coming from the Netherlands, as you might hear, literally the lowlands, I can mention that the expected rise of the sea level is, of course, one of these obvious things that is of great concern in the Netherlands. But also, and the more incidental but torrential rainfall causing these peaks in water level of rivers is, of course, also one of the big things people are worried about. The interesting thing that is the case in the Netherlands is that the main, let's say, economic center of the country, which is a small country, but let's say very, I think, very successful in many ways, is developed below sea level. So you can imagine that it is a huge challenge to sort of overcome, let's say, those challenges in terms of how to deal with that rising water level, but also to deal with the water in general, the level, because the most of the area is built below that sea level. The risk, let's say, as such, has been there for the last 6 centuries, so it's nothing new. But what is interesting is that the inhabitants developed ways to keep out of water for all those years, and let's say they created a sort of maybe first democratic institution in the world, the waterships or water boards. And that was actually an interesting concept, because that was the only way to fight, let's say, the water. And it is an interesting way because it is an integrated way. So all kind of people from all kind of backgrounds were involved in those institutions. They, let's say, voted their leaders, but also they looked at, let's say, their own situation. They brought their own situation to that board, and let's say all these interests and challenges were more or less brought together. So it was really also a very integrated way of fighting, let's say, the risk of the water. And in our view, in Metric's view, that integrated approach is still a key condition to be able to work on a sustainable urban development and make the SDGs really happen. So we all say that we should approach issues in this integrated way, but doing it in an integrated way is something else. It's quite difficult. We talk about it, but we go home, we go back to our desk, and we do the things that we always did. And that's not an easy thing to achieve, to work in an integrated way. And especially also in the European case, we strongly believe that this scale of metropolis, so not so much the local authorities, but scaling up to the metropolitan level, is actually the best, let's say, level to approach the challenges and to also reach that integrated way of thinking. So we include individual cities, we include towns and villages, but our member regions, let's say, also include very rural areas. So let's say the up leveling or leveling up, it's a modern word in England, I believe, at the moment, but this leveling up to that level of metropolitan region, we think is really key to be more successful in achieving what we all think we should do. The most urgent matters in growing towards the sustainable urban future, they do cross municipal borders, like air pollution, drinking water supply, mobility, etc. You don't know, let's say, how that is. But we can bring, let's say, together resources from the individual municipalities, both for attracting the best possible staff, for instance, but also to benefit of combining things. So sort of 1 + 1 is 3 issue, principle. And let's say I can call examples from our members, Greater Birmingham, Groningen. There are many examples in Europe where you can see that, where this bringing together those resources, whether it's money or people or both, has brought, let's say, much more efficient approaches on let's say, tackling the challenges we have. But also in scaling up, and that's also what we see amongst our members, we can also better balance between urban and rural areas, and all in between areas. You know, you have the urban and very rural areas, but all this sort of in between peripheral areas to then be able, for instance, to produce local food or other products, leading to a better resilient region. And I can name there, for instance, Nuremberg, who has been very successful in executing this from farm to fork policy from the EU, where they have really succeeded in, let's say, for producing food for their region, and thus also less importing food from other regions, from other areas in the world. Maybe in terms of on financing, I would like to mention an example which we have just heard of in our spring conference in Turin. That was 2 weeks ago. There was an interesting example because the national government there has called for metropolitan regions and cities to act as a financial hub for the funds coming from the Recovery and Resilience Fund, so the EU fund. That's the, 800 billion euro fund that is there. But how to get that money on the ground, how to get that money on a place where the change should happen. And let's say this Italian government invited to create, let's say, bodies, and in most cases in these metropolitan regions, there are departments who manages the funds that come from the government. And these departments are populated by people from all over the other departments. So it is in a way also a way to bring, let's say, the various disciplines to the table, to also think in a more integrated way, and then to approach this post-COVID challenges. And I think that could be a model also for let's say, a wider use. So in that sense, we see various, I think, interesting examples happening, growing in Europe. And for that, we are more than willing to support the authorities around the world in sharing that knowledge and experience in, of course, the UEF World Pavilion, let's say maybe in a virtual way, but also maybe even one-to-one sharing events or workshops. That's what we do at the moment already with let's say, linked networks in the US, but also examples in Africa, where we bring that knowledge, let's say, in workshops where we bring experts and see if we together can find solutions or at least directions for solutions. So we look very much forward to exchange in depth, let's say, on these difficult, but I think very interesting and crucial topics. And again, for me, the key thing, but of course you can expect that from me, let's say, representing a metropolitan network, for me, the level of European metropolitan regions, the level of the metropolitan region, I think is crucial to really better approach the challenges we all have. And simply because you have a sort of scale that we can really do it instead of being on our own, being, let's say, trying to get solutions on an individual way. So I think leveling up in that sense is really one of the key elements, both for making it happen, the SDGs, but also to make, let's say, to make a sort of transparent and let's say a workable financial instrument to make those SDGs happen. I think is really key to success. So I would like to stop there. It's not very long, but of course we are very much open to further exchange, and we'll see each other, of course, in October.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Henk. We slightly overrun the 5 minutes, but as one of the speakers has dropped out, I think that's going to be okay. So we'll go quickly on to the next speaker, who's Ali Al-Raouf. I hope I pronounced that properly. Professor of Architecture and Urbanism and Head of Research and Development at the Urban Planning Department at the University of California at Berkeley. He's an architect, an urban designer, and a planner, registered in Egypt, Bahrain, and Qatar, and he focuses on comprehensive sustainable design and urban planning. He's been a visiting scholar at the University of California and has been visiting and teaching and research positions at many international universities. And he's also published many papers and critical reviews, essays, and books. And he's currently focusing his research on knowledge-based urban development and post-carbon contemporary Gulf cities. So a slightly different perspective from Europe. We look forward to hearing from you. Over to you, Ali.
Well, thank you so much, Camilla. I am utterly humbled being with this distinguished group of scholars and professors. And I also want to extend my support and appreciation to my dear friend Reza and the whole team at the Urban Economy Forum. I cannot thank them enough for such a dedicated effort to share knowledge and ideas and concepts and bringing all of us different voices from different parts of the world. And I want to emphasize that I am here in Doha, Qatar, one of the richest countries on earth, but yet I want to share with you the voice of developing countries, the voice of places in Africa and the Middle East, and how such communities are trying to understand the notion of reaching sustainable development, attaining better life for their people. And I want to start by suggesting that we need to question what exactly we have learned from COVID, and also from the notion that the inevitability of climate change. I think during the last 2 years, I cannot really find much better chances for us to ask questions, to reflect, to pause and evaluate what we are doing, as much as was created for us during COVID. We did realize that the whole world is vulnerable, not only the poor, not only the marginalized. And hence, I would argue that my fundamental lesson from COVID, which is so much related to our topic today, is the notion of what is our understanding of locality and how we consider local communities when we consider issues like sustainability and better living conditions and quality of life and so on. And hence, I would also suggest that we need to reset our priorities. Which sectors deserve more investment and resources allocated? Again, because of climate change implications and because of COVID-19, we did realize that we need to shift the gear a bit. There are some sectors when it comes to community development where we need to put more investment, more energy, more dedication, such health, research, education, equality, providing services for people who were marginalized for number of years and sometimes whole decades. Because we also realized that COVID was for everyone. It's not for the poor, it's not for the marginalized. Even the most rich people in their castles and their palaces were affected by that. I would also argue that we have learned from COVID and also from the implications of climate change, what I would call it the fallacy of classic economic ranking. And I would suggest that particularly when it comes to GDP, it is not at all an indication of holistic prosperity. Maybe it would give an indication about a specific country's income and a specific country's production, but it's not suggesting that every single citizen, every single community member in this specific state or city is enjoying the prosperity that we are aspiring for. And hence, I would call for a bit of a need for a move towards supporting communities, not regions and states. And particularly in my part of the world, we know that there's a lot of corruption. And if we have a slogan like "no one left behind," we want to make sure that we have reached the right people and we are extended help and support, particularly from an economical point of view, to the people that are acting on the ground and they can make a tangible change. And therefore, I would also argue that my observation about a lot of projects and initiatives, and particularly from funding agencies, that they go to these kind of places in Africa and the Middle East, and they keep on producing colorful reports and wonderful consultation, but you end up with repeating that. So it's cycles of beautiful reports, cycles of advisory trips, without really doing something tangible on the ground. So would it be possible also in our brainstorming about how to use economy to attain sustainable living and sustainable community to consider the notion of we need to work on real projects and answer actual needs? I would also, in the light of this, ask for a redefinition of wealth. Because wealth here, as we discover it also during COVID and also because of climate, not only about the materialistic aspects of wealth, but also community solidarity during COVID was absolutely amazing. I mean, the idea of your ability to walk out of your apartment and your house and see how your neighbors are supporting you and how you create actual sense of community because you are really supporting equality and inclusivity. And therefore, I would end by suggesting that I want to move and to zoom in a bit to the level of local communities and to try to have what I would call it a real circular kind of settlements, community settlements, which is more self-sufficient, more inclusive, more resilient, and believing in themselves and believing in their local resources and local wealth. And they are willing to have our support and have our funding opportunities on the condition that we listen to the local voice and understand the real needs of them. Thank you so much for giving me such a profound opportunity.
Thank you so much, Ali. That is really interesting. You raised a lot of points. I made some notes, which we'll hopefully have an opportunity to discuss at the end. So I think our next speaker is Elkin Velasquez, who's there. Is that correct? No, gosh, I'm sorry. I really apologize. Our next speaker is Angelica Mogele. Now, I'm sure I've mispronounced your name. I'm so sorry about that. But she is Secretary General of the Greens Group of the European Committee of the Regions. And she's worked in Brussels for 31 years, representing the interests of municipalities and regions. And in the past 15 years, she's been Executive Director of European Affairs at the Council of the European Municipalities and Regions. And as I said, she's now Secretary General of the Greens Group of the European Committee of the Regions. So Angelica, I presume it's Angelica, not Angelica.
Perfect. That's perfect.
Over to you.
Thank you very much, Camilla, for your kind presentation. And indeed, when I attended the Urban Economic Forum in 2019 in Toronto, which was really a great experience, I was still working for the Council of European Municipalities and Regions, the European organization representing local regional governments. And at CMR, they were really dedicated and committed to the implementation of the SDGs at the local level, and I was fully supporting this approach and convinced, and that's why I also try to continue this engagement in my current position, which is, as Camilla was just saying, with the Greens in the European Committee of the Regions. And I'm sorry, there are works outside. I hope you don't have the noise as I have it here in my office. So my role, of course, has changed, and it's a very different role I'm playing now, because I'm now working in one of the European institutions, and my focus is primarily on what's happening in the European Union and try to include as much as possible from our perspective, from the local and regional perspective, green elements in whatever is proposed and decided at EU level. So it will therefore be no surprise to you that I would like to share with you mainly the elements that are happening at the European Union level, and those of you who either live in Europe or are following what's happening in the European Union, you are aware that the current Commission President, in particular Ursula von der Leyen, when she took office, she launched this huge initiative of a European Green Deal in 2019, which is really a big project trying to make Europe a carbon-free continent by 2050. This was before COVID, as you may remember, and the ambition was very high. And to follow this announcement, of course, further concrete proposals for legislation had to be prepared, and this is what we are currently discussing in the European Union, in the European Parliament, but also in the Council, where member states are represented. So this shows you already in Europe we have a very, or in the European Union, let's put it like that. As you know, we have a regulatory approach. So we try to put into legislation what we want to implement. And this has advantages and disadvantages. One of the reasons why the UK left the European Union, as you know, because they don't want to be regulated too much from the EU. But this is just a side note. And it's extremely difficult, I can tell you, to come to agree for different reasons. But on the other hand, it's also a huge advantage to see 27 member states to agree to invest in policies that will allow Europe to develop into a greener, in a more digital and resilient future. These are the three priorities that we have defined at European Union level. In the meantime, and previous speakers have referred to that as well, of course, we had COVID, and in order to overcome the problems that occurred with the COVID, in particular for business, but not only, the European Union launched a recovery and resilience facility in 2020 with a budget of something like 672.5 billion euros. And it was decided also that a huge part of this money should be invested into into green, digital, and resilient measures. So to really support the ideas of the European Green Deal and helping to bring Europe's economy back on track. This also includes the specific initiative which was called Next Generation EU, in particular looking at the future generations, trying to not leave all the problems to the next generation, but helping to leave a better world, at least to them. Still focusing a lot on green, digital and digital dimensions. So even so, some actors at European level, including us, I would say also the Committee of the Regions, really try to bring the SDGs into this, into the whole debate, trying to raise awareness that we are in particular connected with the rest of the world. We are not living on an island or in isolation in Europe, but that we need also to be aware that we are a part of the global dimension as well. A last point I would like to mention, because this is what we were supposed to talk about, the financing dimension. Two very important initiatives are linked to that. On the one hand, the European Union decided to more or less give a definition also how what is sustainable financing, because the risk is of course that things are called green and are not green in in reality. And we had just a case in Germany, you have probably seen it in the news, the Deutsche Bank, which is the biggest German bank, just had an it started an investigation because they called investment funds green and sustainable, and in the end it turned out they were not green and sustainable. So they are now sued because this is of course fraud. So the European Union is defining what should be considered sustainable financing in order to direct private money into the right direction. Let's put it like that, because we are all aware there's an awful lot of money available out there in the market. So it needs to be directed to be invested into sustainable projects. And the European Investment Bank, which is which is carried by the European Union member states, they have decided also to prioritize investment into sustainable initiatives. They have created a separate climate bank, and they have issued a roadmap from 2021 to 2025 with very ambitious objectives on climate and environmental sustainability, which is really impressive. So there is a clear willingness and decision at the European Union level to invest in green, I say clean, in green, sustainable, digital and resilient measures to help to prepare, hopefully, a sustainable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Angelica. That's great. So I think we'll just go very quickly to the next speaker so that we can get through. We've got two more speakers, and then we'll have a discussion about the issues that have been raised. So the next speaker is Elkin Velasquez, Director of UN Habitat for Latin America and the Caribbean. He's Regional Director of UNH in Latin America and the Caribbean, as I said, and with a wide experience of Latin America. He's been assisting governments and urban governance and territorial planning, and he co-leads the Regional Action Plan for the implementation of the new urban agenda in Latin America and the Caribbean. Formerly, he was a leader of the Regional and Metropolitan Planet Unit at Nairobi headquarters of UNH, and he's taught at several universities. So Elkin, over to you. 5 minutes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Camila. Good morning to everyone. I am very glad to be part of this conversation. And I am now talking from Honduras. I am in Comayagua, and we are here to discuss about the future of urban sustainable development in Central America. And I wanted to utilize this circumstance that I am here to share some of the messages that we are discussing here with our counterparts, mayors, ministers, but also communities in this part of the world. This is very much appropriate for this conversation about sustainable financing for sustainable urban development. In this part of the world, this is critical. It's critical if we are able to promote much more investment in cities and human settlements. And the reason is relatively simple to understand, but it is worth to recall that When you are in a normal Central American city, you are in a place where planning has not been there. Good planning is not really there, and there is still a lot of efforts to be done in order to get our cities in Central America right. But the good part or the good side of this perspective is that if we get it right, we are going to have multiple effects in multiple dimensions of the different challenges that you might face in one Central American city. The challenge of adapting to climate change, the challenge, of course, to be resilient in front of a number of risks, natural risks. There are cities where you are really facing every single risk, as in a good geography course at the university, confronting volcanoes, floods, landslides, of course, all related to climate change. And that without mentioning also human-based risks that we have in this region, for instance, security. So what we are seeing is that in this part of the world, what we mention, we talk about urban sustainable development. We are really talking about changing, transforming the quality of life of our communities in the field at the very local level, at the very neighborhood level. The governments here are trying to follow up the new urban agenda. I think we need to recognize that. At the same time, there is a big distance between desire and the commitment to promote the new urban agenda and implementation in the field. There are a number of challenges. I will mention the institutional challenges, but for the sake of this conversation, one of the most important challenges here is related to financing. One of the big efforts that we are at the moment engaged in analyzing and making proposals is about how to get to an ecosystem of funding that is really focusing on urban sustainable development, and that can take advantage of, for instance, what is being discussed around the Urban Economy Forum. That's why for UN Habitat and for people in Latin America and the Caribbean, and particularly here in Central America, it's very important to be part of this global conversation, as to get also inspiration from what you are doing, developing and promoting in other parts of the world. Still, the main focus as we see things moving forward in this part of the world is about creating that ecosystem of sustainable financing. What are we contributing with in that regard? In UN Habitat globally, and as also part of the Urban Pavilion in Toronto, we have been developing the idea of the value chain of sustainable urbanization, a very pragmatic approach that is able to invite different sources of financing, not only public sources of financing that need to converge towards the same perspective of improving our cities, but also inviting the regional and the development banks, World Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, CAF, BESIE, you name them, to be part of this process of following up a specific approach of supporting pipelines of well-structured urban integrations, urban integrated operations, and in addition to that, opening also the door for conversations as well with the private sector that is interested in social impact. Social impact that we see is better to be measured through SDGs. To avoid what my predecessor, the previous speaker, Angelica, was mentioning about the greenwashing, that outside there is a lot of conversation about ESG, but who is really to say that this ESG is having the social impact that is being promoted and mentioned? Well, one of the solutions to that situation is really to utilize a global framework that is accepted, that is neutral, that is shared by all of us, and this is the SDGs. And I will finalize this conversation by saying that precisely the added value chain of sustainable urbanization kind of cycle is really trying to link the dots to get the sustainable financing right. Utilizing good information to understand the situation and in every city in this part of the world. Second, having an impact in urban planning based on that evidence, but also trying to see urban planning as a way to connect with SDGs and of course to tackle different challenges at the same time. Third, transforming very quickly the planning aspect of things into actions, into well-structured, including financially, urban integrated operations. And in that regard, we are promoting the initiative of sustainable and ecological neighborhoods. It's a name, it's an umbrella. And behind that, what we have is really the possibility to have a big pipeline of concrete projects, not ideas only, not a list of lines in a PowerPoint, but a very, very thorough pipeline of projects. And I think the counterparts are really appreciating this process. And based on this, connected with the SDGs, because this is the important part of this, we are starting to have conversations with also private sector funds interested in social impact. The key part of this is about certification. I'm sure that my colleague, one of my colleagues later on will explain and will share with you our evolutions about the SDG Global Program and the Cities Investment Facility that is part of all this structure. In the field, this is what we are doing with our counterparts. We are developing at this very moment a very, very important program in alliance with Switzerland in this part of the world, in Central America. And we are really, really very positive about the steps that we are going to give. And we would like really to have the opportunities of the forthcoming Urban Economy Forum to discuss further with all of you. And perhaps also to say that in the Spanish-speaking world, we perhaps need also to develop the equivalent of the Urban Economy Forum, the Foro Económico Urbano Latinoamérica, for instance. And I really appreciate this opportunity and want to say hello to Reza and Krishnan and all friends of the Urban Economy Forum, and looking forward to continue working together with you. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Back to you, Camila.
Thank you so much, Elgin. That was really interesting. So we'll go straight to the next speaker because I do see we might be running out of time. We'll see if the gatekeepers allow us to overrun, but our next speaker is Difford or Dyfed. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Aubrey.
Just to inform you that Dyfed is not with us right now, David.
Oh, so is our next speaker then, Ozan, is our next speaker Robin King? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so now I will introduce Robin King, who is Director of Knowledge Capture and Collaboration at the World Resources Institute in Washington, D.C., I believe, at the Ross Center for Sustainable Cities. And she promotes collaboration across the World Resources Institute network to better integrate urban planning, land use, and sustainable transport. So those sort of three elements. And she has a PhD in economics and a BS in Foreign Service from Georgetown University, and she was a Rotary Exchange student in Oruro, Bolivia, and a Fulbright Scholar in Mexico. So over to you quickly, Robin, and then we'll have a quick discussion at however much time they give us.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to share ideas with all of you. I've got a presentation that looks very long, but I'm going to go through it quite quickly, but that I hope has a lot of information that will be useful for you to take a look at sort of at your convenience. Am I able to share my screen, or Ozan, do you want to share yours? I shared it with you earlier.
Yes, I will open that presentation.
Okay. So I'm going to present work that we've done over the last 6 years. It is a large research project that was based on both sectoral work as well, sort of globally sectoral as well as locally based work. So next slide, please. And in the synthesis report, it's called 7 Transformations for More Sustainable and Equitable Cities. So this slide just says that what we all know, that there are huge services gaps, and this traps people into multidimensional poverty. There are many numbers and statistics that are provided that I'm not going to go over today. Next slide, please. And we know that these service gaps lead to multi-generational impacts, right? And lack of access to services limits lifelong opportunities. And so we talk about the difference between those who are underserved and those who are better served. This research project really focuses on the Global South. Most of our W.I. Ross Center for Sustainable Cities work is in Global South. We have offices in many places, and we try to do a lot of learning and learn from our projects that are on the ground, as well as doing sort of more globally focused research and then bringing the two together. So there's lots and lots on specifics of the urban services divide. Next slide, please. And so we try to show how, if we can close this urban services divide by improving access to services for the most underserved, and that can be sort of geographic locations, that can be ethnic exclusion, that can be sort of all different, that can be economic exclusion, all different kinds. By closing the urban services divide, we can avoid economic costs, which can lead to improved quality of life. And that over time, if we're thinking about then aggregating it, can really lead to citywide transformation. And so we provide examples of all of those and sort of the links between those in different places in different parts of the world. Next, please. So we did sort of 16 papers over the course, sort of launching the framing paper at Habitat 3 in Quito, and then most recently finishing and launching the synthesis report last October. And so we look at these thematic issues, as well as a few case studies in different places of cities that have managed some kind of transformation that usually expanded beyond one sector. I mean, it's not that these cities are sort of best practice examples that we want to follow, but we really wanted to look at the whole process of what enabling factors existed, what were obstacles, how did the different levels of government work together. And so all of this sort of comes together into the synthesis report that then where we tried to focus on then 7 things that we thought were important. Next, please. And these are the 7 transformations. We put them into 3 buckets. 1 on reimagining service provision, the 2nd on including the excluded, and the 3rd on enabling lasting change. And I will very quickly go through all of these and then focus on financing, since that's our topic for today. Next slide, please. When we talk about reimagining service provision and infrastructure design and delivery, we're really talking about trying to prioritize the vulnerable, addressing backlogs, minimizing carbon lock-in, and anticipating future risks. Next, please. As we're talking about, next slide, please. See if it comes through, of service provision models, of really integrating the alternative services. And this has 3 slides, there are 3 animations. So if you can sort of press the first one, oftentimes we see that the informal provision is really ignored. And that leads to all kinds of challenges of alignment. So the first step is just recognizing that there are alternative provision opportunities. Next, please. And then lastly, you actually want to think about integrating them. Next slide, please. The second big bucket is including the excluded. Here we start by talking about data collection practices. We know there are new technologies that can be used, although there's an awful lot of old technology that can be used more effectively too, through partnerships and especially community engagement. Finding ways to tap into local knowledge is really, really key. 4th, we talk about informal urban employment. We talk about this as sort of the hidden giant of the economy that often is missing from a lot of official statistics, but where many people, in fact, most people live and work in many cities of the Global South. Next, please. And then the third bucket is enabling change. So finance and subsidies that I'll talk about sort of much more in a little bit. But urban land management, tying into some of what sort of had been said sort of by Elkin in terms of the importance of planning and thinking about having transparent, well-regulated land and housing markets and spatial planning that really is integrated across the different sectors, so that equitable distribution of services to manage growth sustainably it is quite important. And this is just a graphic that goes from an underserved community to a better served community and different elements of that. Next, please. And finally, talking about sort of coalitions of diverse actors and alignment between different actors and different levels of government. The next slide, that's the next, if you hit the, of going from non-alignment to some kind of alignment into a shared vision, so that you don't have actors working against each other, different levels of government or different parts of the same level of government working against each other, which I think really was echoed in some of the earlier speakers. Next, please. So in each of these cases of these transformations, we design as a way of going from this research into action. We have an action plan for 5 different sets of actors: city government and urban sector specialists, the national government, civil society, including NGOs, private sector, and then the international community. And so I'll walk through the transformation on finance really quickly so that you can see what's there. And hopefully at some point you'll want to go and take a look at the report itself. Next, please. So what we have is on the left-hand side, the status quo. We have chronic underinvestment in core services. And on the far right, we have the desired income of higher investment in core services so that we can target the most vulnerable. And then we list priority actions sort of to move from one to the other. When you go to the next slide, hit it. You'll have to hit, yes. And so for each priority action, and one of the real sort of values, I think, of this research is not just saying, well, here's a suggestion, but using at least one example. And we actually tried to have one example from each sort of major continent to show how some cities or countries or regions in different or states, sort of depending on the government and the context, actually have implemented these kinds of actions. So the priority action are increasing national government investment and directing it where the need is the greatest. And so there's an example from Bangladesh. Here on these slides, we just have one example each. Then you can keep going if you want. And then for each of these different sectors, we have specific things that they can do. So for the case, let's go, we'll do this one since it's here on city government and urban sector specialists of prioritizing ways to reduce the cost of urban services, to increase investment in urban services, to ensure service coverage and affordability, to adopt a longer, wider financial planning horizon, to regulate the private sector role. If the city can do that, although often the city can't do that, the state or the national level needs to actually do that regulatory role, but that's very, very important. Giving communities a voice in the allocation of public spending, as well as the development of different kinds of instruments, and considering innovative and diverse ways to increase affordability of urban services. So we go through each of these 5 different actors and provide examples like this. Next, we can move just to the end, just so we go through in these others that we don't have time to go through all of, but all of these papers are available. If you just go to the last slide, at Cities for All. If you've got questions, we have them available. We have most of all of the papers are available in English. Some of the papers, the executive summaries of the papers are available in Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, some in French. Soon we will have the executive summary of this synthesis, and something that's similar to what I presented today for all of the transformations in French, Spanish, Portuguese, and Chinese, but that's just taking a little bit of time to get there. But I hope that this is of interest, and I look forward to further conversations with you, with your colleagues about such topics, and hopefully the Urban Economy Forum, whether it's in English or Spanish, in Toronto or in Latin America, or wherever it may be, that we can continue talking about how to apply these kinds of ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Ozan, how are we doing for time? Because we are kind of at the end of our session. What do you want to do?
Yeah, so we can move on to, if you will, to session 2. Did you have any concluding remarks?
Well, I picked out a few things. I mean, I think I can run through them very quickly in probably 1 minute, and hopefully you've recorded everything anyway, so we can look back afterwards. But I think one of the big questions that was posed by one of the speakers was which sectors need funding, and we need to help and to energize those situations. And then there was a question about the scale. Should it be local or more regional? That needs, I think, discussion. The redefine wealth, I think, is a really important issue that we kind of, you know, that we do ditch GDP, but that we think about other ways of measuring our wealth and including human capital. I think the interesting thing that was raised by Angelica was, you know, the EU regulatory approach, and that is the regulatory approach the right way to go. You know, if you want to leave a better sort of world for the next generation, or can it be more voluntary? And that is probably a very big question. I think that there was also a point about the need for an ecosystem for funding. I won't go into that in great detail, but that sort of global framework is probably very much so necessary if we're going to be able to deliver these improvements and changes. That it is all about change. So about actions, about having complete projects in the pipeline as opposed to just loads of ideas and bullet points that don't really add up to much. Which was mentioned from Elkin in Central America. The idea of perhaps smaller satellite UEFs across various regions or global, you know, situations was an interesting one, which might be something that has to be considered. But it's about enabling change and integrated thinking. And I think that was the one thing that probably came out of all of them, was the idea that we have to have integrated thinking so that we don't end up having projects that undo the good work of other projects and so on. I'll leave it there, but happy to come back later.
Do we have any questions from the audience as well, or anything that they want to mention before we jump to this next session? Edmando, I see your hand up.
Yes, I have a question. My name is Edmundo Verna. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to listen to these very exciting presentations, and to see some friends and to meet new faces as well. I had a question to Elkin, but I think that he left. As an urbanist, and as Elkin knows, and maybe some of you know, I've been working for many decades with sectoral value chains in cities, like transport value chain, construction value chain, textiles, etc., among other things. But this is one of my areas. And the value chain is by definition specific to a given product or a set of products. So when Elkin mentioned the urban development value chain or something similar, I became quite interested and curious. But I don't know if he is around, or if somebody else knows about the urban development value chain that can share knowledge with me, and I'll be happy to also share knowledge from my side. I worked for 16 years at the International Labour Office as an urbanist, and so very much focused on this issue among others. Thank you.
Thank you, Mansu, for your question. We have David Aubrey. Camila, would you like to introduce him? He's our speaker for this session 1 as well.
Oh my goodness, I just closed my notes, but let me find them quickly. I think I have something. David, apologies. I thought you weren't going to be joining us. But
no, it's fine.
I
can introduce
Brilliant.
myself quickly if you wish.
I found them. You're a senior advisor at UN Habitat, right? And currently working with UN Habitat sub-program on shared prosperity of cities and regions, having headed the regional office of Arab states. Is that correct?
Thank you. Yeah,
and you're passionate about improving the quality of life and achieving the SDGs. So very welcome to you. So please crack on.
Thanks so much. And sorry to have been so late joining, but actually I was just on a call with the head of Desenvolve SP, which is a regional development bank for the state of Sao Paulo. And I actually put my hand up just to respond to Mr. Edmundo's comments, because I work with Elkin, and I thought I could sort of pick up where he left off, perhaps, although I didn't quite hear his speech. But I think this idea of ecosystem of finance, or the value chain, is so important at the moment. What UN Habitat and the world is bracing itself for the continued explosion of urbanization, and we're expecting 2.5 billion more people to come to cities in the next 30 years. And the question is, where will they arrive? And you know, at the moment, larger cities are better able to attract investment when we're looking at you know, financing sustainable development. When we talk to some of the project preparation facilities and some of the banks, they're often interested in large cities because large cities can generate pipeline. But what we need is to ensure that investment is getting into smaller cities and tens of thousands of small cities, so that they're able to accommodate growth effectively. If we can do that, then the impact of growth, it means that if the growth, urban growth, is spread over tens of thousands of small cities, then they can grow at a pace that can manage, that's much more manageable. And that way you can avoid having this massive proliferation of slums when you have a rapid expansion of larger cities. And so, and also when we're looking at issues of climate, we speak to some of the major climate funds, and they are struggling to get finance to cities. So we need to sort of look at this kind of value chain, or this ecosystem of finance, and how can we make that work? And some of the things that we're exploring now is portfolio aggregation. If we could know what are the needs of, you know, hundreds of cities in a country, or tens of cities in a country, and able to work with them from data which is informed by the SDGs, to strategic plans which are also informed by the SDGs, to identify the capital investment priorities, and actually have a database of the subnational investment needs across the whole country. Then you can start portfolioizing them. You might find that in a country with 50 cities, there are 30 of them that need to replace their old diesel buses with new buses. You might find there's 20 of them that need street lighting. You can generate larger scale investments and procurements and achieve economies of scale. But you can also, if within this ecosystem there's a guarantee facility at the national level, which could introduce some conditionality, say, around climate or around environment. So yeah, a city might want streetlights, but if they're going for solar streetlights, they can be eligible for some de-risking funding. Similarly, if a city wants buses, but instead of going for old diesel buses, they're going for some electromobility or something different, they could be relevant. So looking at this kind of ecosystem or value chain from that perspective, can enable a small city that might be overlooked when it comes to financing, or a mayor of a small city that might not know how to deal with procurement and the sort of complexities of investment. They can leverage their needs of a national or a subnational level portfolio. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in this area. I think just talking to Desenvolve SP just now, the Latin American, the IDB Invest, World Economic Forum cities, there's a lot of kind of convergence of thought. And I think we have now the World Urban Forum in Katowice in a few weeks' time. We'll be really kicking off this debate to really understand what ecosystems of finance are, what value chains of investment can look at, so that we can be more efficient of getting capital to where it's needed on the ground and where it's needed mostly and has the greatest impact. So I think it's a fresh journey. I think there's a lot of frustration about the way that capital is flowing or not flowing at the moment. And we would very much welcome people to join this kind of journey to be able to much more effectively move capital to where it can have a serious impact. So thanks very much for accommodating me so late.
Thank you, David. And we have Derek Giberson. You had your hand up, I believe. Did you want to make a comment?
Sure, not a comment, just a very quick question, I think, and it's to one of the previous panelists, Angelica. You had referenced the European Union and the efforts to create a definition of green financing or sustainable financing. And I'm just wondering if that is something that's readily available for others to look at.
Sorry, that could be the case. It's still controversial, as you can imagine. It's currently, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's in the final stage, because the European Parliament, in particular, our group, was contesting the fact that the European Commission defined investment in gas and in nuclear power as sustainable. And our group and others are currently contesting this this decision. So it's still in the process of being final approved. But also already to tell you, I said that the EIB is going in a very sustainable and green direction. EIB director some years ago already, he said, or at the beginning of last year, sorry, I think it was, he openly said for him gas and nuclear power is not sustainable. Therefore, the European Investment Bank is not going to finance any project in these two areas. But I can share that information as soon as I find the source.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And with that, we can conclude the first session and move on to the second, which is Cities and Climate Financing. Our moderator is Eduardo Lopez Moreno. He's the former acting director of Sustainable Relations, Strategy, Knowledge, and Innovation of UN Habitat and Global Urban Researcher and an architect. He's also an award-winning photographer. I don't see him with us at the moment. Are you here, Eduardo? Okay, I will go ahead and introduce our first speaker. She is Jane Lumumba, Manager of Global Sectors and Government, KPMG Canada. She's currently a PhD student in environmental studies at York University and a teaching assistant. As part of the ERA project, Jane will research financial technology firms and digital currency platforms in Canada and the world. She's currently working as I said, the Global Sectors and Government Manager at KPMG Canada. With that, can I please give the floor to you, Jane?
Definitely. Thank you very much for inviting me to this platform. And I understand I'll be speaking on cities and climate finance. Just to piggyback on my colleague Difid's comments on really the elephant in the room, there's a lot of conversation about the opportunities, the challenges of getting that climate finance that is out there to cities. And the question really is, how do we actually get cities to get this money so that they can implement their projects and transition to a low carbon economy? So just keeping in mind that I don't have much time, I'll just speak to 4 points. And having worked with cities, particularly in the global south and particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, I'm going to speak from a city perspective. What do these cities need to do to ensure that they get this climate finance? So the first point is really the ability to de-risk projects, and cities need to work with their national governments and work with the relevant stakeholders to create a low-risk environment for stakeholders in the climate finance ecosystem, ensure that they have stable cash flow to repay debts, they need to mature the revenue collection processes, and really the link between project risk is also coupled with organizational risk, and this requires broad institutional and change management, both at the technical and political level of cities. And this will ensure that cities are able to meet the risk and governance standards required by climate financiers without having national governments or national development banks to step in to de-risk projects. And another key point that David raised, which I really spoke to me, was the idea that there are a number of small cities, and we just concluded Afri-Cities in Kenya, in Kisumu, and we now know that approximately 65% or even more of people in Africa and cities live in secondary cities, very small cities, and they're growing. And what the cities are doing and have done is to position climate change institutionally within their municipal structure in the environmental department. But in order to develop bankable projects for sustainable and climate resilience infrastructure, we know that we need a diverse set of technical skills. We need the engineers, we need the financial modelers, and these skills may not be traditionally domiciled in that environmental department. So cities at that level need strong collaboration at the municipal level to ensure that the right skill sets are employed and deployed within their cities to ensure that these projects are developed and they're bankable and they're de-risked and they're attractive to investors. And alternatively, there's also the option of upskilling officials working in the environmental department so that they have the requisite technical skills to develop this bankable project. And then another point is really the soft side of things that no one really talks about, is really the ability of these cities, particularly secondary cities and not large cities, to develop relationships with funders and financiers and different stakeholders within the climate finance ecosystem. I think developing this relationship and getting to meet each other, and unfortunately these are normally done in informal settings, but I think it's very important that cities have direct contact relationship with the funders, and they get to understand what are the requirements, what are the needs that cities have, and what are the requirements from private sector investors and different stakeholders within this ecosystem. And that's very important. So, and that requires very strong intergovernmental relationships between national government and city governments as well. And they need to be able to work together to ensure that cities are getting in touch directly with this climate change financiers as well. And one other thing is cities also need to be able to practice as well, particularly small cities. They need to be able to strengthen their revenue capture system, either from taxes or from utility management, which really signals financial strength and enhances their ability to manage resources, and that sends out a positive signal to financiers within the ecosystem that cities are ready and can handle these large amounts of money. So those are just kind of my key points around getting cities to get access to this money that is out there, and really building their capacity and strengthening their capacity in a number of areas, both technically, politically, organizationally, and financially, to be able to receive this kind of money. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane, and thank you so much for your wonderful presentation and your work. I would like to also thank our previous moderator, Camilla Wien. Thank you so much for your moderation. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. Mr. Eduardo is here with us. Please, Eduardo, go ahead and take the floor.
Awesome, thank you very much. I'm sorry for being a bit late. I was hearing what Jane mentioned. I took notice of several things, and I fully agree with her that cities are ready to manage. However, also, and I'm talking in my experience with UN Habitat, we realized that only 20% of cities, study of 500 cities, were really ready to prepare sound financial investment projects. And 4% of them were able to access local financial markets. So this readiness, it will be interesting, not contradicted what Jane mentioning, but to identify which are the bottlenecks and how we can in one moment make cities to be even more ready for this. Thank you, Jane, for your presentation. I would like to give the floor to Jonathan Hackett, who is the co-head for BMO Energy Transition Group and head of sustainable finance from the Bank of Montreal. Jonathan Hackett, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Eduardo. So I'll briefly share what our team does and then how we think about climate finance, particularly for cities. So, the Energy Transition Group and the Sustainable Finance Groups at BMO really focus on how we mobilize capital to organizations, companies, cities, countries that are working towards creating a more sustainable future and on navigating the transition to a low carbon economy. Particularly for cities, we are looking at how we leverage tools and solutions within finance at scale in order to drive the energy transition. And within that, we really see 4 different areas where people are looking to finance climate within cities. One is how we finance the construction of new built environment that includes low operating and embedded carbon, so that essentially we're not building a further debt and a further obligation that needs to be solved. The second is how we decarbonize the existing built environment, understanding that retrofit and deconstruction are both highly intensive and very challenging on financing. The third is how we build the infrastructure that we need to actually decarbonize living within cities. Obviously, transit is a material part of this, but things such as district heating are other great examples where at an infrastructure level, we can drive decarbonization within cities. And the last is financing resilience. And that one obviously is a challenging space today where the parameters of resilience have not been clearly defined. And I'll apologize, I'm plugging my headset that's dying at the same time. But really the financing of resilience is one of the opportunities that we see in the future and one that requires, I would say, the greatest lift in future in terms of constructs. Within this space, we are seeing specifically several opportunities that are financeable today and are driving near-term activity. Those activities are ones that most aptly tie into the existing financing infrastructure. We spend a lot of time with, I would call them concessionary impact funds that are looking at how to drive climate, and they are very useful in driving incrementality on future opportunity. But to meet the scale of challenge that we have today, we are very much focused on how do we tap into the existing fixed income infrastructure that finances long-term projects and can do so at scale. So that, most often in my mind is insurance companies, but can also be pension funds or other bond funds that are looking and buying long-term debt. Within that, the most powerful solution is debt that is incrementally positive to the operating profile of entities. So you can think of that as debt where we essentially are getting operating benefits that offset the cost of the financing and are therefore incrementally benefiting the city or the building or the municipal structure that we're financing and doing that. This is where energy retrofits have been a very powerful structure because you do very much see operating benefits, reduction in energy reliance that can create a financeable product or project. The second is very similarly those solutions that don't require a green premium. So using carbon sequestering concrete that has better environmental properties, better physical properties, and a comparable cost is something that can be incentivized potentially with environmental commodities and not require concessionary finance. The last and the one that does require a greater perspective and a broader perspective is opportunities that can be backstopped typically by a somewhat concessionary organization because of their catalytic potential. And the best example of this I think of is the building of infrastructure that a city will use, for instance, to have hydrogen or electric buses that then can provide scale and incentives to allow others to adopt the same technology. So if you think about the distribution of hydrogen for vehicles, one of the greatest challenges is getting to the scale required for both production and distribution within a given jurisdiction, building a set of infrastructure to meet a city's scale demand on transit allows others to tap into that. And you can see opportunities that may appear concessionary at first, but actually allow others to take an equity-like position and get a benefit from the risk they're taking in building that infrastructure. So in closing, what I would say is I think there is a lot of opportunity in climate finance for cities. It is a great opportunity when we look at what can be made to look and feel like traditional financing that has a scaled network of buyers that are very keen and will differentially purchase and price debt from cities that is driving these environmental benefits. And that is where our team is very much focused as we work with our city clients and also obviously technology providers as well and investors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. Very clear, very to the point. I would like also, I'm going to make a final remark just for the sake of some discussions to raise some points that you mentioned that I think are extremely important. How do we navigate, you asked, the transition to a better form of less carbon use or not use at all? And I like a lot your 4 points. The built environment, again, working in UN Habitat, we have seen, Jonathan, that in many cities of the world, the built environment conspire against the ecological transition in different forms. So we need here much better planning, regulation, conditions, finance, as you mentioned. The decarbonization, of course, is extremely important. And what you mentioned about infrastructure, the sequestration of carbon, and the financial resources and tools are all extremely important. I would like colleagues that are hearing that you keep Jonathan's suggestions, adding the long-term projects and also the need of scaling up actions as important elements for this discussion. Thank you very much, Jonathan, for this concise, clear, a very, I would say, organized and succinct presentation. Let me move to the third speaker, is Maria Rasmussen, who works as a manager of the corporate responsibility and sustainability at Arbeidet Landsbank. Sorry for my pronunciation, Arbeidet Landsbank. Maria, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I think you pronounced it pretty well. Is it possible to share my screen? I think.
Of course. I don't know who is in charge. Osam, you?
Yes, let me see. You should be able to share the screen now.
Okay.
We don't see it.
No, it says host disable participant screen sharing.
Sorry, let me see. Would you be able to send me your
I think I'm able to right now. Can you all see it?
Wonderful, wonderful. It is clear now, Maria.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, the floor is yours, Maria. You are going to talk about the importance, as we can read, of sustainable finance for the transition of the economy. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. And thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be able to speak here today. I very much agree upon what has already been said about the importance of sustainable finance. And obviously, as a representative from the financial sector, we also believe that private capital is actually crucial for the transition of the economy. So what I've been prepared here for today is how we are working with sustainability within Arbejdernes Landsbank, which is a Danish bank operating in Denmark, and obviously within the European Union. So we are very much affected of what Angelica also said about what's coming from the European Union. So I will try to get you through what we have actually done in terms of sustainability and how we have received some of the regulation that is already taking a toll within the bank. So what I have already said, we are a Danish bank. We consist of 3 different financial institutions within the group. We are not the biggest bank in Denmark. However, we have been designated as a systemically important financial institution in 2021. So obviously we also have capital that make an impact on society and in the green transition in particular. So what we have done so far is that we have determined on an ambitious sustainability strategy going forward. We have signed the UN Principles for Responsible Banking, the UN Principles for Responsible Investments and Global Compact, and we did that in late 2020. And we have been working within a year and a half on actually getting into the process of identifying our own impact areas in terms of our loans and investments. What sort of impact do they have on society? And we are very much in a process still in terms of measuring our greenhouse gas emissions and also planning on setting long-term targets. So this is a very it's a major amount of work we need to do in doing this, because we want to make an effort in doing it the right way. So we still spend a lot of time on calculating all these emissions. In general, climate risk is a risk to the financial stability in the world, and obviously also in Denmark, and to us as a bank also operating in Denmark. A changed climate and extreme weather events, which we can all see with our own eyes looking outside at the windows, have obviously physical risks with derived effects for our business. But also, not least, climate change also entails these enormous transitional risks for the financial stability also. And therefore, we need to put an emphasis on what sort of risks we actually put our business for, and how can we actually meet those risks and handle them in a sustainable manner.
Maria, sorry the interruption. I don't know if it's only me, but I don't see the slides moving.
Okay.
I would like, perhaps it's only in my computer, but if it's the case with others, just to bring to your attention that for some reason, there is a mismatch between what you are saying and this slide, which is still in the first one.
Okay.
Sorry the interruption for that.
Thank you.
You would need to click on the presentation mode, which is, that stand looking thing in the other box. Click on that, or you can individually click on the slides on the left side as well.
Okay, I'll try again.
Yes, that's the button you need to click on.
Okay.
I don't believe it's showing up for us though.
It doesn't show up. Okay.
So you would need to individually click on the slides.
Yes, you can on the left.
It's the button left. It's the button second right, not that one, but the one next to it. So not the button you just pushed, but the button next left from that button.
Okay, I'll try again.
Sorry for that, Maria.
That's okay.
It works now.
Yes.
Does it work now?
Yes, it was okay. Just to go to the appropriate slide.
It doesn't seem like it's showing any.
Not now. It's not showing.
No, I'll try again.
It works.
Okay, it's not easy. Does it work also when I switch slide?
You are in the UN sustainability timeline.
Yeah.
Taxonomy now.
Okay, it doesn't really work for me. I'm very sorry.
It's working. We can see this slide.
Yeah, I know. Just need to go back.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see that now? Okay,
Yes.
hopefully.
Continue.
Yes, obviously we operate within the European Union, and the European Union has set out a very ambitious sustainable finance plan, which obviously affects us tremendously, because now we can see what this sort of regulation actually means for us as a business. We totally back this plan, and we cannot see that we can succeed with the Paris Agreement and the UN SDGs if the plan is not as ambitious as the European Union has been doing it. However, it is very difficult to live up to all of the requirements going forward. But what the European Union actually has been working a lot on is actually determining what a sustainable activity is, because for us, in order for us to, as a financial sector, to make a positive impact on society, we need clarification as to what sustainable finance is, and we need clear definitions of what sustainable activities are in order for us to allocate or reallocate investments in those directions. And also what Angelica said before, depending on whom you ask, you will probably get many different opinions on what is sustainable and what is not. In particular, energy is one area of great debate in the European Union. So it is very, very important that we have a sort of common understanding of this particular topic. So what the EU has done is that they offer guidance. It doesn't seem like it's actually showing the entire slide right now. Oh, maybe now. In that the European Union has presented us a taxonomy so that we can know what sort of companies and activities we as investors need to focus on when allocating investments. The sustainable activity need to substantially contribute to one of the 6 environmental objectives that the EU has defined. They will also define some social objectives later on, but right now it is these 6 environmental objectives. We also need to make sure that the economic activity do no significant harm to the other environmental objectives, and we also need to make sure that it lives up to minimum social safeguards. So obviously you can imagine how much data you need in order for us to actually measure that. Besides knowing what a sustainable activity is, we also need to have defined what sustainable finance is. And according to the European Union again, the sustainable finance refers to the process of taking environmental and social and governance considerations into account when making investment decisions in the financial sector. So that is what we need to do at the overall level. But again, it's very difficult to practice. And therefore also the EU has also tried to determine what a sustainable investment product is. So maybe I need to show the rest of this slide. It's thinking. Okay, I can actually move on and say that the interest in sustainable investments is actually increasing rapidly in Europe, and ESG and reporting ESG have become an even more important part of investment processes due to the introduction of the EU disclosure regulation. And the aim of this regulation is to provide investors with a better overview of the degree of sustainability in investment products and the possibility to compare investment products and funds based on how they approach sustainability. So what we have done so far in Arbejdernes Landsbank is that we have come up with a new policy for responsible investments. We have a strategic focus on sustainable investments. We want to increase the amount of sustainable investments within our portfolio so that in 2025, all our investments can be classified as sustainable. Given that there is still some uncertainty about the specific criteria for sustainable investment products, we have chosen a prudent approach, and we're a little bit hesitant in defining what sort of products we have on the shelves right now, but obviously we will be clear on that later on. Now I'll try to go, yeah. So the overall objective of the EU sustainable finance strategy is obviously to reorient investments towards more sustainable technologies and finance growth and contribute to the creation of a low carbon economy. So what are the implications of this very ambitious strategy and all the regulations coming up? This is the EU Sustainable Finance Plan, which also have a major impact in terms of how we approach this topic within the bank. And obviously it's a major plan that they have set out for us. We of course spent a lot of time on reading into the regulation and understanding it, and also, you know, implementing it and reporting the KPIs that we need to report on. The EU also wants us to actually put an emphasis on how we govern sustainability within the bank. So we have also set up a sustainability committee within the bank where all the members of the executive management is members of this committee. And obviously they have the responsibility for our sustainability strategy, and they also are responsible for implementing the policy on sustainability. They have mandate and decision-making powers so that we can approach our targets. We also have a formal sustainability steering group, which is being set up in the fall 2022, and which will make sure that we are aligned across business areas and functions and subsidiaries. So you could probably imagine that the amount of time and effort we put into this. Yeah, that was it for me.
Thank you very much, Maria. Many things, all important. Of course, I retain this notion of a governance mechanism to make sure this fundamental plan, finance, fundamental investment, sustainable plan works. I like a lot the idea of not only to define what is sustainability, but also how to measure that. And your 3 points that you connected on safeguards, harm, criteria for standards is extremely important, and it's something that we should look at it. And the risk and de-risking of all these mechanisms in order to promote investment, but to make sure that we are always keeping in good track what we do. One study of Human Habitat, it's a bit old, 4 years or something. As you were speaking, I was looking at this, and some of the main conclusions, it was not about Europe, neither Denmark, but in general, it's that business in general are not obligated to measure the negative impacts of the environmental results or the 3 elements that you mentioned of sustainability of the European Union. And since you don't have mechanisms of measure, it's very difficult to define fairness and responsibility. And I think those are elements that should be considered on this accounting mechanism for financial sustainability. I don't know if we will have time to come back to this, but Maria, in case you stay, it will be good if we reduce the time of summary, but it would be good if you mention at the bank level, when you provide some of these loans and things, how do you measure to come back to see impact of what is being done with these funds in order to make sure that they keep these standards and perspective of the European Union? Thank you, Maria, for your intervention. Let me now move to Morocco. Younes Ouassri, Ecodom. Younes, c'est à toi de parler. Tu as 5-7 minutes pour présenter ce que tu as à nous dire.
Can I do it in French? Is it possible to do it in French or English?
I don't know what were the considerations. Personally, in one moment, I even spoke better French than English, so I don't have a problem, but I don't know if it was allowed. I would ask Osam and Reza, who are there, if you feel more comfortable in French. Do we have translation, by the way?
No, but if you could,
I'm gonna make an effort to do it in English. I'm used to doing it in French, so I'm gonna make an effort to do it in English. So I've just shared my screen. I don't know if you can see it or not.
We see.
Okay. So what I'm about to share right now is an experience that we are conducting here in Morocco. It is a concrete solution that we are proposing in order to build new cities in a manner that protects environment and reduces the cost of investments while taking into consideration the carbon footprint. My name is Younes Bouzri. I'm the founder and CEO of Ecolom Maroc, which is an enterprise that is specialized in ecological construction of houses and infrastructure to develop rural areas in Morocco, in Africa, based on using local raw materials, mainly earth, and the main shape that we are using for our constructions is the dome shape. So the adventure started from a simple remark is that when we travel across Morocco, Africa, and the Middle East, we come across beautiful landscapes with a huge natural potential, and to restructure in order to bring value to this potential and to sustain the flow of tourists who are visiting. And the fact of building this infrastructure using traditional methods like concrete, wood, or steel would damage this potential and not necessarily provide the comfort that we are looking for when it comes to climate conditions. So we were inspired by the work of an Iranian American architect called Nader Khalili, who developed a technique called the super adobe that consists on substituting the framework, the traditional framework using wood with another framework using bags or sandbags. Those are the bags that you can see in white color in the different three photos. And those three photos showcase the phases of buildings. There is the foundation phase, the superstructure phase, and the finishing phase. And this technique enables us to have great advantages. The first advantage is reducing the time of construction up to 50% compared to the concrete methods. Since we are using earth as a raw material that we are exploiting on site, we can reduce the timing for transportation, and we can reduce also the timing of creating appropriate formulas using traditional raw materials to build buildings. The second advantage is reducing the cost of investment. The price per meter square is reduced up to 40% compared to different traditional methods. And the third advantage, that is the most interesting one, is that through using the thermal characteristics of the material earth, we can create buildings that adjust naturally to weather conditions. In other terms, we don't need neither air conditioning nor heating in order to adjust the temperature in the inside of the building. And this has a repercussion on the investment toward energy that we consume in these buildings. For our business model, for the moment, we are proposing two services. There are the technical studies regarding creating architectural, structural, and electricity, water, and sanitation plans. And the second service is the service of construction. We have three teams that are mobilized all over Morocco, who are qualified and trained regarding different earthing techniques that we use. And regarding the client segmentations, for the moment, we are targeting two niches. The first one are the farm owners who would like to build a house, an affordable house, while taking into consideration the integration into the landscape without harming the fauna and the flora that we have on site. And the second niche are the investors in the ecotourism or rural tourism activities regarding creating hotels that are implemented perfectly in the landscape where we have the touristic potential. And let me also share with you some of our references. This is the first house that we have built nearby Rabat, the capital, on a 177 meters square, in which we combine between traditional methods and modern methods. And when it comes to the interior design, we explore the Moroccan artisanal finishings in order to create a comfort that through which we won't be needing any air conditioning nor heating. A second reference that we have built in the Mountain Atlas, through which we have experienced severe weather conditions. During winter, it reaches -5 to -10 degrees, and during summer, it reaches 45 to 50 Celsius degrees. And the students of this area didn't have an infrastructure where they can practice intellectual activities or extracurricular activities. So the main idea was to use local raw materials, to involve the locals into the process of conceiving the building and during the construction site, so that we can create something that comes from the locals for the locals. And the third reference, and through this one, we are creating luxurious houses through using local materials, and we are combining between stones, earth, and wood in order to create something that goes in harmony with the landscape, while maximizing the comfort that we can propose in the inside and in the outside of the building. And if you are visiting Morocco, we can organize a visit to our constructions. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jonas. I think you are a very modest person. Your English is perfect, and it was very clear. I like a lot the presentation. I think from the previous one and this, we have a very good example of how some of these funds can be used not only for ecological, but for environmental, financial, social solutions. And I would add something very interesting that I saw in your presentation, aesthetics. The value of aesthetics is very beautiful inside what you presented. And all these elements, I like what you say, from the locals to the locals. And these kind of solutions bring again a fundamental discussion on how to use finance in a sustainable manner, but in which the soul of the city, the soul of the people can be preserved and can be also upgraded to some extent using this kind of solutions. It is nice and interesting. Thanks very much, Jonas. I was supposed to be the next speaker, but I'm going to make some concluding remarks. So I will skip myself to avoid speaking twice. And I would ask Yvonne Young, the head of urban design of the city of Brampton, and all colleagues working with urban economy and the pavilion. Yvonne, the floor is yours.
So I think we can move on to the next speaker because she's not with us.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know that. Then let's move to the last speaker, is Gurdip Kaur, Director of Strategic Projects, Planning, Building and Economic Development, also from the city of Brampton. So I think one of both decided to speak, I understand. And then Gurdip, the floor is yours. You have 5-7 minutes to make your case about this.
Yes, I see her. Yvonne is here.
Okay.
Hi.
Wonderful.
Yes, so I have a small slide that I'm going to do a share screen. So primarily from City of Brampton perspective, we have been focusing on climate action, addressing climate change, focusing on climate adaptation. So first is dealing with flood risk. Another element is on decarbonization. So that is dealing with active transportation, really about using SDG cities and using that as a case of the shifting of how we're investing in infrastructure. In the current state, there is significant amount investing in auto infrastructure. So that's a new resource we can create from finance standpoint. The third component is on decarbonization through using mass timber building, but also combination with high performance building and district energy. So within the city of Brampton, our report has showed that as a community, we've been spending $1.8 billion on energy. and $1.2 billion is escaping, outside of the city. So from a financial standpoint, that is not sustainable for the city and also for the community. So the city has policies and a combination of guidelines and matrices, and working with both on city projects and also with the development industry to really take action to change the course. So I'm going to do a quick share screen. It's going to show you a tangible example focusing on a walkable neighborhood that we are modeling through the SDG cities. And what I'm hoping to highlight is that focusing on the financial element on the potential impact, and also talk about some of the practical challenges at the city scale that would need a creative resource in order to make those happen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
You do have access, but okay, now we see it.
No, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So this slide shows where we are located. So City of Brampton is within Ontario, within the greater GTA, which is considered the second largest financial center in North America. So therefore, what we're trying to do in here is significant. Potentially, if we are successful, it can shape the future of 2/3 of the other car-oriented neighborhood in North America. So what we observe is that from the climate perspective, 60% of the problem is because of driving, 40% is because of performance of building. And on top of that, there is a climate resiliency issue dealing with flooding. So this is a neighborhood, is a real neighborhood that we're working with 12 developers making that happen. And what is interesting about this neighborhood at the moment is that there is a combination of natural heritage features. We see that potentially having 200 acres of green roof. So the city is working on a green roof bylaw, potentially using that to generate the next local economy in terms of growing food, but also from a sustainability standpoint to reduce the amount of cost for infrastructure using for stormwater management. There's also 100 acres of parks and open space as well. And we see that how we can use that to double up the function, because the cost for dealing with extreme weather events is very significant. And there's a few slides we're going to talk about that. The second issue is about active transportation. So this is talking about 20 kilometers in this scale of complete streets. But in order to make the shifts, those complete streets need to be delivered early on so people can shift the mode. But it's not just about the street, but it's also the land uses. And the land uses is a combination between that and the district energy system that is happening in the neighborhood. So the yellow highlight area is show that the active places where changes are actively happening. So as you can see at the city level, the practical challenges is that not the changes happening at the same time. So how do you quantify it? How do you measure it? How do you show the resources that is needed at a community scale is a very common challenges that all cities are facing. So within the City of Brampton, Council has endorsed the Vision 2040, so provide very clear direction to show sustainability innovation in a very tangible way. What we observed during COVID is that within the neighborhood, there's already a change of behavior. There's already 50% of increased use of AT. Like in other words, from a finance standpoint, we already have a case to make a shift in terms of how we are investing in infrastructure, not on auto infrastructure, but making a shift to sustainable active transportation and transit infrastructure. So this is showing the magnitude of where that community is located. And what we want to communicate through this slide is that majority of the walkable users is concentrated in the current location that is away from where people live. And doubling up is a scenario. What if there are extreme weather condition? What would be the low-lying area and what would be the potential impact? Because the data already show us the increase in precipitation, particularly in the winter, is already increasing. So within this year, so this is an act of God. It will happen, and it's not something that is avoidable, but it also at the same time is very costly. So this is about trying to design the community in a way that we can minimize these damages. So this is just showing with one event. There's 15 million damages of cleanup and also damages to public and private facilities. And we know that because of climate change, these frequency of events would increase during the year. So within this neighborhood, there's a combination of private and public investment. Private investment, including district energy within post-secondary education, and also within shop as well, so which is Realcan and a major developer in the area. There's geothermal by private investment, but there's also public investment in terms of all the public building, looking at net zero, using mass timber, using at solar PV and all that kind of PV, really trying to bring the energy level down. So one of the key major challenges that is very practical challenge is that what is needed is creative resources so it can deliver these open spaces as one piece early on, so as a flood mitigation, as a flood risk management perspective, and also from a overall social health perspective is that early on we can deliver the performance so that as a community is built out, we can meet the performance measure, whether it's about 20% of the site area as park spaces or meeting the 27 square meters per capita that can be achieved. The second challenge is dealing with people walking. So that is the 60% of the GHG challenges. So how do we get people out of the car is that we have to make the destination within walkable distance. So as a master plan level, the city has a plan of what we want to see on the ground floor. That not just for shops and restaurant, but it's intentionally creating spaces for culture, arts, and social and recreational and library. Like in other words, the daily needs. The practical challenges is that what is needed is the creative financial in terms of upfronting the resourcing so that the connection of this road, the facilities within these first phase of buildings, making those facilities early on is possible. With that, we will be able to make the shift, targeting 75% of the trips will be by walking and cycling. And we also study the data knowing that the cost for implementing active transportation infrastructure is only 10% compared to the cost of creating new road, not to mention the $1 billion currently contributing to maintaining existing roads. So that is very, very extensive. So in order to make this work, it means that we need to make a shift in the model and creating a new differentiation. So we know that private investor, many of the REITs company, they do need to meet their board requirement of ESG. They need to report on ESG, on sustainability investment. So what we want to do is we want to leverage them, particularly looking at how at the federal and provincial level, there's a new change in building code, which promote 12 stories of mass timber structure. So this is a new form of building that's through biophilia and using that to attract the high-tech industry investment. But also at the same time, from a cost perspective, this is cost effective because the construction timing is only 50%. So we see that this could be the new differentiation. Looking at the scales of the investment that is coming to the city and to the overall GTA, we see there's opportunity to create a new differentiation using this to drive a new set of the economy. And I think this is what we see the future economy focusing on, not just for energy, but focusing on really zeroing in on GHG, but also at the same time, not just for dealing with physical health, but social resiliency and other matters. So maybe I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yvonne. Let me say that Brampton and you particularly and your team, it's full of innovation and creativity and articulating a lot of technological development. I also like in your presentation how you move from the space, from the neighborhood and the social resilience and all these concepts associated to the better use and this concept that also, I love it, from TOD to TOC, which is the transport-oriented community instead of development, and your fundamental notion that working at different scales, including these buildings and the high-performance building responses with design is extremely important. I think Brampton can be a very good example in the world of how investment infrastructure, how decarbonization is connected to a new notion of neighborhood planning, understanding that when we were studying responses at city level associated to the pandemic, the cities that provided the best responses in the world were those that were neighborhood sustainable ecological responses. And from there, restructured in a governance manner, the whole society, the whole city, and the whole country in some places. So Brampton to us is a wonderful example, and your presentation confirms once again this. I want to thank you for that, Yvonne, for this presentation. I wonder, do we have a Good.
Sorry, Eduardo, you froze up there. I couldn't understand what you said. We do have one more speaker. She is Gurdeep Kaur, Director of Strategic Projects, Planning, Building, and Economic Development at City of Brampton.
That's what I was asking, yes.
Yes. Can we give the floor to her, please?
Yes, please, go ahead. Gurdeep, the floor is yours.
She's currently mute. Perhaps, Eduardo, you can give your final remarks. We will begin the next session in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
And if we have time, we can give the floor to Gurdeep.
Yes, obviously, I wouldn't like to repeat, just highlighting some of the elements. This fundamental notion of what is sustainable finance, obviously connecting environment, social, and governance. We need to recall that in the environmental is fundamentally climate change, but we have also preservation of biodiversity, and we have also the circular economy concept that are to be considered in this fundamental notion. As Yvonne mentioned at the beginning of her presentation, this notion of adaptation on finance, which is extremely important. Something that I didn't hear too much in the presentation is how the social considerations play on this. Yvonne, again, in the Brampton example, we can see that equality, inclusion, and investments are connected to this new redesign of this ecological neighborhood. But in many of these presentations, also with what Eunice presented, of course, equity and inclusiveness are presented, but we would not like to be guided only for the fundamental notion of finance in the sense of economic development, but this connection to what we are saying. Governance, we need to think more, and again, Maria's presentation and Jane's at the beginning, Jonathan also somehow mentioned this, is how public and private institutions work together in this, and what is the fundamental notion of management structure and relations for executive solutions that include this long-term perspective. Now, just to recall that cities and urbanization were considered by the IPCC as one of the critical global system transitions, and the SDGs as one of the accelerators. However, and this is a very big however, when we talk about, as Jonathan mentioned, on the built environment, cities in the world in the last 25 years increased their footprint 3 times more than their population. And as I said, this conspired against any kind of fundamental sustainable finance because it reduced densities and it affected the environment. It is estimated that something, obviously these are gross estimations, 30% of biodiversity was affected by cities increasing 3 times more of what they needed. Now, what do we see is that climate finance landscape, there are some things that are to be fixed. For instance, national urban policies, 120 countries in the world adopted national urban policies, which is a very positive thing, urban being part of the realm of development. However, only 40% of these proposals included what, again, I like a lot on Yvonne's presentation, climate positive solutions. And this notion of positive is extremely important, only 40%. Now, if you consider that during COVID, in the period where everything stopped, the IPCC mentioned that annual emission reduction should be 7.6 every year. And in the year where everything was paralyzed, it was 8.5. Which means that the system needs to be changed and many things need to be adapted in order to respond to this. For this, we need resources. However, the Paris Agreement said that rich countries should mobilize 100 million every year, but since Paris Agreement up to 2 years ago, rich countries have mobilized only $80 million. So it means that we are far beyond what we want to achieve. And finance concentrates mostly in mitigation, 70%, 20% in adaptation. And this is also important because city adaptation is really dragging behind. And as I mentioned when Jane was presenting, from a study of UN Habitat in the 500 largest cities, only 4% of them were developing sound financial proposals for investment and to access local financial markets. This means that a lot of work needs to be done in the climate action responses in support climate finance cities solutions. We need also, and I think it was Jonathan who mentioned the resilient concept, to rethink to some extent, to reconceptualize resilience, because resilience to large extent means preserving the status quo and doing many things that keep some balances, check and balances, but they don't represent fundamental changes in the equity and other important elements of the solution. As I mentioned, I like a lot the idea of coming back to this notion of sustainable neighborhoods, ecological neighborhoods, and not only specific isolated actions. Last comment is, how do we balance between productive economy and some of the industrial or large investments in which environmental responsibility seem not to be always part of the equation. As I mentioned, difficult to measure, difficult to define responsibilities, difficult to understand up to where business accounting can be part of these elements. And finally, what is the role, for instance, the proposal of Branton to be brought to another levels of government in which feasibility investments at what Maria presented, durability, subsidies, grants, tradable certificates that Jonathan and others presented, can really be part of a financial institution in which city planning connects to that, and not only big national governments and corporations, as seems to be today the case. And with this, Ozan, some element that I just speak as people were talking, I want, on behalf of the organizer, to say thank you to all of you. This is session number 2, Cities and Climate Financing, and I return the floor to Ozan and the team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eduardo, for your wonderful moderation. We always appreciate your support. And I saw that Johan had her hand up. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I just want to capture a moment to talk about in order to dealing with the neighborhood scale. I'm just going to share one quick slides.
Yes, of course.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, it's loading.
So this is a presentation we recently presented to Urban Institute, so which is the world's largest real estate-based international think tank, research think tank. What we articulate is that other than dealing with the changes within a new neighborhood, but the growth within existing neighborhood is also significant. And the reason why the Brampton case study is interesting is because the growth, the population growth within the existing neighborhood is 5 times of Toronto, is 10 times of CMA. So what we are strategizing on is that when we talk about social equity and all the other elements, how can we improve the quality of life of people within the existing neighborhood are in 3 folds. First, dealing with food. So how do we use the front yard spaces and backyard spaces in a productive way? Secondly, is mobility. How do we provide for micro-mobility? Our bylaw, our policy already provided for alternative uses. You are permitted to use your garage for different purposes. You can set up your home business. How can you make those productive? And third component is on energy, is on building. So we know that the cost for maintaining existing building, particularly that would usually get translated, downloaded to people who are renting the space or owning the space, that is very significant. So from an affordability standpoint, we want to find a share model. So part of that is retrofitting existing building, having a program. Another part is that having the car share program, and it's community driven. So there's a program, it's called Turtle. It's very popular in Brampton right now. So that provides for opportunity through the private sector that the community will be able to share their vehicle. So I think it's a combination of all of these need to happening at the same time in order to make the shift, and also promoting the walkable neighborhood model that SDG CD has talked about.
Thank you, Yuan. And I see that Gardu Kaur is with us. She wasn't available, but Gurdeep Kaur is the Director of Strategic Projects, Planning, Building and Economic Development at City of Brampton. Gurdeep, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience in waiting on me. Something urgent had come up, so I was just a little stuck in that. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly.
Fantastic. Yvonne, thank you for the great presentation. Yvonne and I work together, so it's amazing to hear Yvonne present, as I'm often in meetings with Yvonne, just to hear all these thoughts and the things that Brampton is providing. First of all, thank you to Urban Economic Forum for making Brampton a part of this presentation today. We've been working with Urban Economic Forum, for those of you that are not aware, for about the last year and a half. And we're just in the process of finalizing our commitments with them to see how we could, at the City of Brampton, take part in sustainable development growth and also be able to have a seat at the UN along with Urban Economic Forum as our platform to see how we can better benefit the municipality that we work for and the community. Their focuses of environmental growth, sustainable environmental growth, and affordable housing are some of the major things that Brampton is focused on. And those are some of the views that I share. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we can move on to the next session, which is Emerging Financial Models, Technologies and Tools for Sustainable Urban Development. This session will be moderated by the Urban Economic Forum Secretary General, Ananta Krishnan. Krishnan, are you with us?
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again for the participants as well as speakers so far. It's been quite interesting to follow through the whole session. And the next theme of emerging financial models, technologies, and tools for sustainable urban development indeed sort of meshes in well with what has been discussed so far, since science, technology, and innovation solutions actually contribute to protecting urban areas and populations, by empowering and giving people a voice, including the most vulnerable, extending access to education services, making possible the monitoring environmental risks, as well as enabling the development of sustainability even during emergency situations. So we have a number of speakers in this regard, focusing on the emerging financial models, linking with technologies and tools for sustainable development. The first is Dr. Serge Alou. He's the technical advisor for UCLG, which he has been seconded to UCLG by the French Minister of Foreign Affairs. And he has been working, in Latin America and Africa. And he started off his career, I suppose, in Peru and Ecuador. And he also believes that technological change is now driving economic development. So it'll be interesting to hear from you, Professor Serge Alou, your views on emerging financial models and technologies. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation and the invitation of UCLG to be part of this conversation. So I will not focus much on technology, but rather on institutional aspects for local and regional governments to access adequate finance. So before, just wanted to make two preliminary remarks. One is that it's fully recognized in principle that local and regional governments are at the core in the implementation of the sustainable development goals. But in practice, I mean, they often lack both the resources, human resources, institutional capacity, financial resources to act as public actors, as they are, in their own right. They're not competitors to the national governments. No, they are also public actors acting, and they should act together in trying to pursue these objectives. So the first preliminary remark is that one. No, we have to fully recognize, not only in theory, but also in practice, that local and regional governments are at the core of the implementation of the SDGs. And this was also strengthened by the role they played during the COVID crisis, in continuing providing services to their community. And for that, of course, they need finance. They need finance both to cover their current expenditure, to be able to deliver on the mandate, but also to be able to make capital investments in benefit of their communities. The second preliminary remark is that we should, at UCLG, we have a particular focus on not only capital cities, but intermediary cities. Intermediary cities which will concentrate most of the urban growth, basically in Africa and in Asia in the next coming years. And of course, intermediary cities have different needs, different from those of, and different capacities also from capital cities. So having made these two preliminary remarks, what is diagnosis? Diagnostic is that there's a big mismatch between the resources supposedly available at global level and the access of local and regional government to these resources to be able to fulfill their mandate, to meet the expectations and to meet the needs of their communities. So what are, from our point of view at UCLG, the major network of cities and local government around the world, what are the issues and the priorities that we see are the basic conditions for local and regional governments to better access adequate finance? The first one is the fiscal space. The fiscal space that cities and local government have or don't have in most developing countries, to be able to fix tax rate, to fix tax base, to have kind of an autonomy to be able to collect the resources that they need, at least to cover their current expenditure. So rebuilding the local fiscal space is for us a major priority. And within this, broadening the fiscal autonomy of local and regional government is key. And also, in this aspect, I think we should better reflect on the composition of these own source revenues, tax and non-tax revenues from local governments. The COVID crisis has shown that most of the current revenues of local governments were based on economic activities. And when economic activities are down, the local revenues are also down. And there is not so much emphasis placed on what is local taxation related to property. And this is to our, in our view, a key aspect. Property taxes, working on these issues should be a key priority in most developing countries. So first thing, rebuilding the local fiscal space. Second thing, that in most developing countries, I'm focusing on developing countries in my presentation, but most developing countries are highly dependent on intergovernmental fiscal transfers. Now, in Africa, 60 to 80% of the resources of local governments come from the central government. So the problem there is that these transfers from central government are not stable first, are not predictable by and not received on time in many cases by local governments. So this impedes them to be able to plan their investment in the city. So greater stability, greater predictability, formula-based intergovernmental transfers. This should also be priorities for policymakers. The third aspect is that in many countries, it's impossible for a local and regional government to have direct access to capital markets and to financial markets in general, both at national and international level. No, everything needs to go through national governments with guarantee from the national government. And in many countries, the constitutions or the legislative framework impedes local governments to have access to external finance. So what does this mean? This means that for us, there are two main issues there behind this. One is the necessity to strengthen the capacity, human, technical, institutional, financial capacity of local government. And this goes through, technical assistance programs, among others. The second one is that we also need, at a global level, both at the global level and at the national level, to work on improving and changing the regulatory framework that, impedes local government to have proper access to both national resources and to external resources. So what do we claim for at UCLG in this context? First thing, we think that at the national levels, and not only at the international, there are many technical assistance facility for the preparation of projects that have been set up by DFI, development finance institutions, etc. But this should go down to the national level. And at the national level, we think that there should be arrangements made for national governments to provide assistance and technical assistance, both to increase the creditworthiness, both to help cities to prepare financeable projects. So technical assistance should be provided at the national level by concrete action taken by national governments to help cities, and in particular intermediary cities, to be able to access finance. A second one is second recommendations that, and we're working on this at UCLG, is the need for intermediaries, also at national level, intermediaries that can act, subnational development banks or a national agency that can work as brokers between external financiers and local governments, providing technical assistance, but also, providing innovative arrangements for a local government to be able to access finance. Innovative arrangement means blended finance, guarantees, credit enhancement. All these kind of technical tools that are very well known. And finally, what I would say is that in many countries, we don't have knowledge of what local finance is all about. We don't have data, we don't have information on this. And if we want to build public policies, we need to have evidence on which we can debate between all levels of government around these issues of local finance at the local level. So we are claiming for the implementation of information system around local finance that are badly needed in many countries. That's it.
Indeed, thank you for the very concise and systematic presentation of linking up institutional needs with the needs of technology. Thanks again. Next, I would like to invite Giuseppe Tesoriere, who is the Senior Regional and Urban Economist in the Cities Research and Knowledge Exchange of at WRI, World Resources Institute. And he, of course, he was working for UN Habitat before, so he is aware of the international context of sustainable urbanization, now linking up with the WRI, which also has launched recently what is called the Urban Shift as a new initiative. May I then request Giuseppe to make his presentation? Thank you.
Thank you, Ananta. And thank you all for the invitation. For me, it's a great pleasure and honor to be here. Today, I would like to share with you a few reflections and ideas on the current situation in the urban finance and share a few input on key practice should be considered as strategic and priorities in the new financial models. Let's start with the, can you go to the next slide? Let's start so with the very big picture. This picture, we know very well, this picture is about the urbanization. And one of the main message looking at this picture is we know where the urbanization process is. So we know the geography, and the urbanization has shifted to low and middle income countries. If you look at the projected change in urban population 2015-2030. So we know that most of the low middle countries are impacted by urbanization process, and these are mostly located in Africa and South Asia and Latin America. Next. Correlated to the urbanization process, we know what are the main issues. And one of the most important and main challenges is equitable access to core urban service. This is a key issue because from the access to core urban services, we can have a multiple effect in terms of environment, social, economic issues. So just in few numbers, 1.2 billion city dwellers lack access to affordable housing, 58% of urban population in low-income countries with access to electricity. And then if we look at the 15 major cities in the global south, we can say that 50% of population lack access to piped water, and 64% of sewage in these 15 cities are, the sewage is unsafe managed. These results come from our last World Resource Report. Next. So the key question is how to finance municipal services infrastructure in a current situation where the cities mostly impacted by urbanization process are spending very low for municipal services. As we can see from the left to the right, you have the cities located in the global south. On the right, you have, for example, New York or Singapore. You can see how the matrix is clear. So we have the population, the budget per capita, how we can think about for the future and how we can use these metrics to understand better the financial models. Next one. Another metrics I would like to show you is the correlation between urban planning and municipal expenditures. One of the main recommendations in international organization, in academia, is if you increase density, you can generate economy of scale. If we look at some budget items like sanitation, water, and waste, we can see the relationship between the density and expenditure. We can see that through the green line, that this is true. So increasing the density generate economy of scale. This is not, unfortunately, this is not always true Because if I look at the red line, that this is a sample of struggling and emerging cities. So these categories come from our last World Resource Report. So these are the cities that are experiencing low income and growing population. We can see a different pattern. So density doesn't generate economy of scale. So we have, and we know the reason. Many reasons are related to urban planning, governance, and also data, for example. Next one. What is the right model and tool? This is a key question I would like to bring on the table, because over the last decades, international organization, private sector, together with the government, we have developed many models and tools, PPPs, corporate bonds, municipal bonds, but also the international organization provided concession loan. But the question there, the answer to this question probably is depends. It depends where we are, the geographies, depends what kind of service or infrastructure we would like to finance. But another question I would like to bring on the table, what are the right conditions to make this model effective and perform well? Next one. To address this question, I selected three main barriers in red, and I would like to share a few key practices, I think, and this is what we are working on at WRI, to include in the new financial models. Because on one side, we have a lack of data tool and for planning, so we need to strengthen the capacity to analyze the socioeconomic context to select model and tools. Another important barrier is difficulty to mobilize finance. And in this sense, one key issue is we need to foster a blended model, not only from a financial perspective, but I mean from blended model of development that can generate good partnership, especially, and I would like to recall what Eduardo said before, with the local actors, with the local communities. And at the same time, another key aspect is the standardized procurement and financing solution, geographically based. That's why, as I said before, we know what kind of model can work better in the context. So we need to be focused on what are the financing solution works for specific context, and we need to be focused on the standardized procurement. Last point is the capacity building. We need to work more with the local authority, with the local institution, and we need to invest more in capacity building across the time, because in the long term, the local institution needs support and funding, but in the short and medium term, we need to invest more for prepare project and also to well equip the local institution for investment for priority project. These are my last remark for this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Giuseppe, for a very extensive and informative presentation. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And may I then request Alexander Heischlinger, who is the co-founder of the European Cities for Sustainable Public Finances. And he's also the founder and CEO of GovInsight. And he was actually the founder, or he established what is called as the European Public Sector Award. So it'd be interesting for us to hear from him. How does he actually think of innovative mechanisms for sustainable development for cities, and what emerging models are there? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome, as well as a nice introduction. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes,
thanks
we can.
Also, yeah, thanks also for sharing the slides. First of all, I would like to say thank you to the chair of the EUF for the invitation. Also, of course, for nobody says that, to Ozan for all this logistical preparation. I mean, without him, we would not be here. Nobody says that, but thanks a lot for that. And also a special thank goes to Angelica Potmögele, because I think she was the one who got aware of us, contact my colleague at the KDZ, which is hosted, let's say, located in Vienna. And then I got the, let's say, invitation here to briefly outline who we are, what we do, what are the priorities, and how we do it. I can only share many of the remarks, comments, and outcomes which have already been, let's say, exposed in the entire morning, in our case, entire afternoon. I'm representing here the European Cities for Sustainable Public Finances, and it makes me a bit loving because you have the title for your next forum, Sustainable Urban Finance. You only have to choose, let's say, replace one word, urban, with public. But of course, in our case, since we are cities, we also have the, let's say, special focus on public and city finances. I'm a co-founder and the chair of it. Please, the next slide, who we are. We are a group of European cities. European cities which are working together with a very specific mandate and objective, because we believe in the sense that if the city financial, budgetary, fiscal issues are in place, then you are at the end of the day better off. You're sustainable in the one, let's say, simply words. Because we have discussed a lot, there are a lot of saying there are no funding available at the city levels. Others say they have no access to the capital markets. Others they say they don't get the money from the national level. But at the end of the day, I cannot 100% always share these opinions, because in our cities, the way you manage your money, if you have the cash, if you also save, when you can save, at the end of the day, then you can invest. In this case, in infrastructure, green infrastructure, SDGs, etc. Here we have 6 European cities working together. It is hosted by the KDZ, which is the Center for Public Administration Research located in Vienna, in Austria. And most proudly we are that we have the Commission on board, the European Commission. Because normally, as you know, the European Commission works only with the national level. And they are, let's say, a full member in our group, saying that they are participating actively. They report also back to internally. It's for us fantastic in that sense, because it's very rarely done. We have here, as you can see, cities coming from the EU and outside the EU, but of course, all are European cities. And it is for us the most important thing. If you go to the next slide, then I give you a bit, what are the objectives and the benefits? Of course, what we advocate for is sound financial management, because if you have that in place, as I said before, then you can do much more. Growth, competitiveness, prosperity, quality of life for your cities and businesses. If you pay in 15 days or 16 days to your provider, as the city of Barcelona or other cities, then of course you have a different, let's say, margin. Okay, here it's the European context. We are also very much contributing to capacity building, because what we produce, we try to transfer also at the local level within Europe and outside of Europe. We meet twice a year. I'm very proud that it is at the C level. It's the CEOs and the CFOs. Maybe we should now add, because when we come to the topic on the SDGs and sustainability, the chief sustainable officers, which are much more now available also at the city level. We meet twice a year around the topics of the interest of our members. We decided it is exclusive membership, because we want to work cross border. That means one city per country can participate. As you can see, it has nothing to do because the one city is better than the other one. It's simply because we want to share and we want to exchange cross-border, because we know at the city level, in financial terms, in budgetary terms, not much is yet possible. In the next, if you want, we have a very, let's say, co-designed collaborative approach. So everybody has a voice in the vote. I do chair, but I do not impose. In the sense also, when we have the themes what we discuss, which I will briefly, let's say, share with you afterwards, as well as when I have a co-chair in a rotating principle, etc. And what we, if you push one more, if we produce, what is most important is we produce a lot of reports of these meetings, on all the different topics, and we share it internally. Another success criterion, maybe it's not often used, is we have a please help session in our meetings. A please help session is nothing else, and it's very, let's say, honest, that one city raises an issue, a problem they have, and the other states try to solve it. They try to expose their solutions if they have one. They give real advice, recommendation, the way they do it, and the other city hopefully then comes home or goes back into their own city government, reporting to the mayor or the city councillor, we have solved the problem we have raised at the meeting. The next slide, you can see a bit of the whole work of the last 8 years. We started in 2014. We have meeting, as I said, twice a year. And here you can see all the topics the city managers themselves have chosen, what we, let's say, discussed, and where we then always try to have a very practical key takeaways, lessons learned, etc. Of course, you can see we have budget issues. We speak about financial accounting, whether cash modified or accrual issues. We look at how can financing planning better be improved, oversight, infrastructure issues, EPSAS, which is the European version in motion or in preparation of the public sector accounting standards. What is the role of CEOs and CFOs in the new environment, etc., etc. Here, all was before COVID. Therefore, I put it also here together. It was until November 2019. And then, of course, things have changed. But before that, I want to also show that we have, let's say, very concrete output on the next slide, because what we have produced is unique, a joint standardized financial report and based on joint financial health KPIs across border. This has never been done before, unfortunately. It is also very difficult. We have chosen to do that together. When we discuss this, we have drafted a model. We have agreed to do it on accrual accounting, and also then to guarantee a sound and harmonization approach. This is published. This is annually also updated and allows it a lot, because Serge mentioned it, there's not a lot of data available, or not always evidence. We do have the evidence. There is data available, and you can even compare. I don't want to say ranking or one is the better than the other one. It's simply that we share and learn from each other. As I said, COVID, the next slide, as well as unfortunately the current war and the Ukraine situation, has finally shifted ourselves to the attention of the SDGs. Because the first 5 years, and we have to be very honest, since 2015, and the UN has done a great job establishing the SDGs, we have not paid a lot of attention on it. But now we have it. Here, our cities, we work now on. Here you can see the different meetings. Unfortunately, it took place virtually. We have worked on the SDG 11, of course, Sustainable City Communities. We have done a lot of work on the climate action issues. You can see also the subtopics, what we have discussed it, how we looked at it from the financial lenses. We looked at the clean and the affordable energy, SDG 7, etc., etc. When it came then also to again, COVID is getting over. COVID is hopefully ending, and now we are hopefully in that situation. Here again, how can we recover? And here again, I say we do have money from the European Union. We do get Next Generation, but many municipalities, especially the smaller or the medium size, it's very difficult for them to absorb it, to execute, to have good projects, not a bigger one. Also, in that sense, we have discussed a lot what is the changing role of an CFOs. When we speak about sustainability, it's not only to put the SDGs, the beautiful color in the box, to a budget item of your traditional budget. They need to be changed completely. Yeah, when you do the spending, when you, let's say, give the money away. I also heard about the fiscal autonomy. I can tell you in our group, we have a clear consensus, but there's no ideal model in any of the cities whether we need more fiscal autonomy or less fiscal autonomy. In fact, in COVID times, those who have 60, 70% or 80% of fiscal autonomy at the local level suffered much more, because all their revenues, all their taxes, all their fees for transport, they have completely gone down. So they had not the money, and they had to rely back to central money, subsidies, aid, etc. In the next slide, and it's the last one, this is our roadmap here. Of course, what we combine is the SDGs together with digitalization. These are the most important aspects, priorities in our cities. We have discussed how can we, let's say, better use the digitalization. In this case, we had a meeting, the last one in Vienna 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, on AI, identification, cybersecurity, but we will return very soon back, because we are such in a critical moment, to the SDG, when we have also seen again where we have recovery and where we don't have it, reducing equality, etc. So this is a bit what we do. I think I don't have much more to tell. If you are interested in more of the recommendations, in let's say key takeaways, I can also provide it bilaterally. We have been featured in several of the publications, especially the right on local public finance. We have an own chapter there if you're interested in more academic work, because we also publish what we do. But I think in these 5 or 6 minutes, I leave it there, because we are already in, at least here in Spain, on a very, let's say, late stage of the afternoon. My kids, they come home, I think, in every minute. Thanks a lot for your attention, and for me, a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you for a very, very extensive, interesting, as well as to the point presentation, which actually fits in very well with the next meeting of the Urban Economy Forum in October. I do hope that you can play an important role in partnering with us in identifying people as the themes for sustainable urban economy, which is the economy and urban finance, which will be the main theme of next Urban Economy Forum. Now we have two more speakers, and our time is also sort of somewhat nearing at the end. So may I then request Dr. Kulwant Singh, who is the CEO of 3R Waste Foundation based in India, and he has been working with UN Habitat, working on water sanitation based services, and he has been engaged in making cities like Indore one of the sustainable cities in India, and he has been actually participating in urban economy issues for many years, and he also closely works with the Indian government and the Minister of Urban Development. Dr. Kulwant Singh, the floor is yours. Dr. Kulwant Singh?
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are, yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think for this introduction that you have given, basically, our focus as 3R Waste Foundation is to work closely with the governments, also chambers of commerce in India, and also we work with the Federation University in Australia on one side and the UN Center for Regional Development Japan on the other side for their annual program on 3R and circular economy. So I am going to really share with you how, for example, the process or transitioning of to circular economy, how the finances can really help out. But before that, I would like to touch upon some of the fundamentals or the basics that we are really highlighting. One is of course, the 3Rs, reducing, reusing, and recycling, because the 3Rs is closely linked with the concept of circular economy and move towards sustainable development goals. Next one, please. In the 3Rs, recycling is most important because it protects the ecosystem and wildlife, conserves our natural resources, saves energy, reduces carbon emissions, and also, of course, creates jobs. Recycling, particularly creating a lot of jobs in the country. Perhaps I think it's something very, very significant. Yes, next one, please. I would also like to mention that recycling helps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by reducing energy consumption also, because recycling and climate change are very closely linked, because recycling is beneficial to the climate crisis in two main ways: limiting the quantity of raw materials being used and by limiting the amount of waste going into the landfills. Next one, please. We have to understand the economies for resource management. Our present focus is basically linear economy, but gradually we have been moving to recycling. And now, of course, the focus is increasing on circular economy. In India, very particularly, I like to mention that our think tank at a national level, what we call NITI Aayog, earlier it used to be Planning Commission of India, they have actually identified 11 sectors in the industry for circular economy, which they are trying to facilitate and support in many ways, both in terms of technology as well as in terms of financial help to those sectors and those industries. Next one, please. The concept of circular economy, I'll not go in a larger detail, but circular economy, recycling, that might call end of pipe, while a circular economy's upstream solutions address various issues and problems and redesign the product. you need to design, produce, distribute, collection, recycling. As a matter of fact, the whole idea is that the residual waste is minimal, and we try to make use of almost everything in a significant way, by recycling. Next one, please. Making materials circular and eliminating waste is the main idea of the circular economy. And we need a very efficient use of resources, closed loops, and design components to retain material value. Next one, please. I'll run through because time is less. So while circular economy is very, very important, but the focus of the circular economy is also that we try to aim at zero and negative environmental impacts. And for that, we are actually not only collaborating with the society and trying to promote new lifestyles, but also, so far as businesses are concerned, we are aiming at that they do have new business models such that they are able to make use of all their products in a very circular way. I would say that one of the things which I normally mention is the water. Water should not be just used and then thrown away. Water should be recycled several times. A country like Singapore is using water, not only the fresh water, but also recycled water, wastewater used several times, basically that. Yeah, next one, please. We are promoting circular economy and a zero emission society, and we are trying to aim at change of consumption patterns and production patterns both, because they would go beyond the climate action. And that's where the aim is for the circular economy. And we are trying to aim at that in a several ways. Yes, next one, please. Well, trying to aim at what we say regenerative economy. That basically means that we are not trying to waste anything that is really, produced. Moving away completely from what we call the linear economy. So this particular diagram, what we call a butterfly design or butterfly diagram, is trying to indicate how, as a matter of fact, we are trying to recycle, refurbish, reuse, redistribute, maintain, and collect. In a similar way, basically, we are trying also in the agriculture sector, we are trying to do the same thing, basically trying to aim at that we do not waste anything and trying to come to a zero waste level. By so doing, we are aiming at climate adaptation in a very big way. Next one, please. This is again a similar way, similar presentation in a way how the circular economy is really moving. We are trying to, separate waste, reuse, resources. It's a different way of presentation in that sense. Reducing, reusing resources. We are trying to reduce resource dependency so that, we try to conserve the resources which are naturally available to us. Yes, next one. Circular economy generates 4 technological needs. We need advanced collection, sorting, and recycling. We also need efficient material processing. Then we also actually focus on production to support design for circularity, which also aims at repairability, disassembly, and 3D printing, and so on. Circular economy is not possible without what we call the 4th industrial revolution. By using, all elements of the 4th industrial revolution, we should be able to promote the circular economy. Next one. The industrial symbiosis contributes towards circular economy. We are trying to close supply chains, selling waste, byproducts, energies, sharing resources by co-working and generating facilities, increasing resource and energy efficiencies, process optimization, extending product asset useful life. Basically, that is the main idea and the thrust of it. Next one. So various economies towards sustainability, basically circular economy produces green economy and bioeconomy also. So I would again say aiming at zero waste, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, value added from the biodiversity and cultural base. Next one. There are three pillars of sustainable development: social, economic, and environment. Basically, so we are aiming at sustainable business models and support, proper governance and risk management, and aiming at zero waste and sustainable transport system and adaptive climate change. Next one. The nature-based solution tool in the circular economy is also significantly important. I will come back to this a little later in my next few slides. Yes. Just running. The circular economy delivers on climate and other ESG goals while offering new and better growth opportunities. Climate change and environmental, social and governance, ESG topics, they have become key boardroom topics today for financial services, firms, their clients, and regulators. It's an essential part of the solution to deliver on related targets and manage associated risks. Moreover, as an industrial transformation agenda, it's a source of new and better growth and value creation that goes beyond ESG. Next one, please. This slide very interestingly indicates to you that our present approach is highly extractive, wasteful economic models. There are interesting examples of plastics, for example, 359 million ton production in the year 2018. Out of that, 50% of the plastic basically is single use, of which 98% gets completely wasted. It is true for fashion and textiles, 98 million tons in 2015 production, 60% of clothing is landfilled or burnt within years of being made. 99% is wasted. Why, therefore, circular economy becomes very important? Because our current economic model is what we call take, make, waste, which as a matter of fact needs to change if we want sustainability, if we want to aim at meeting the targets of climate change and climate adaptation. Therefore, we have to really ensure. It's also in various sectors, food and agriculture, for example, 33% as a matter of fact, of the edible food gets wasted, 98% gets further wasted on. Next one, please. So this is a concept of circular economy. We are trying to shift to a system where we keep products and materials in regular use, regenerate natural systems, and we try to aim at this kind of approach and system that we do not have to, just keep on using these resources and throwing them away. Next one. Coming to the, I'm just trying to wind up actually, just a couple of slides.
Please.
Circular economy is fast emerging globally. Companies and governments increasingly recognize the potential of circular economy to tackle the root causes of climate change and other global changes. All aspects of finance will be vital to scale the transition to the circular economy. Private sector investors, banks and corporate finance departments, as well as governments and other public sector bodies that control trillions of dollars of public investment and set the regulatory framework, all have crucial roles to play. Next one. So this is again kind of the circular economy plays a vital role. 45% of global greenhouse gas emissions associated with making products and growing food. You know, basically 55% of the energy is really used. Total current global greenhouse gas emissions, 55% energy, 45% products and food. So how the circular economy helps tackle climate change is quite indicative that we really need to regenerate natural systems to sequester carbon in soil and products. Next one, please. Circular economy has started transforming entire industries. Here are some very interesting examples. In 2017, we only had one signatory for this. In 2020, there were 200 plus signatories, actually representing such a fast increase of adoption of the concept of circular economy by the industry in different sectors. Next one, please.
Thank you. Last slide, please.
I'm just trying to wind up actually. Can I just request switch over to the last slide? I'll just like to say the way forward. There is a role of private sector, financial sector. Last 18 months, at least 10 corporate bonds were issued with part of the proceeds available to be used for circular activities, totaling over $10 billion. So there is a lot of change that is really happening because corporate sector is also trying to adopt the concept. Last slide, please. Next one. Next one, next one. Next one, please. Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit. Just to mention, the way forward is that it is now the time for finance to capitalize on this particular momentum and help accelerate the circular economy transition. Governments, central banks, and financial regulators can complement and enable the shift in the private sector. Governments can directly invest also in circular economy activities. As I mentioned, that in India we have set, as a matter of identified 11 sectors, where as a matter of fact circular economy is getting promoted. Innovations, set direction, leveling the playing field through pricing externalities, etc., etc. Central banks and financial regulators can also integrate circular concepts in risk assessments and modeling, and could explore integrating them in less conventional methods such as green quantitative easing. Blended finance solutions combining public, private, and philanthropic capital can fund harder to finance circular economy infrastructure and long-term innovation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Singh. Thank you very much indeed. Actually, we have gone now over time, and it's a pity that we are unable to keep the time, even though the presentations are quite inspiring and informative. May I then request the last speaker, Mr. Masood Ganji, who is the co-director of Urban+Future, and he is also president and founder of Ganji organization. He has been working closely with urban economy for many years. Mr. Masood, your floor is yours. Please be brief as well.
Yes, hello everybody. I'll keep it very quick and short. Thank you to Urban Economy Forum for giving us the opportunity to host this meeting. We are looking forward to the conference UEF4 in October 3 and 4, focus on sustainable urban finance. As you may know, global COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated the housing affordability crisis in Canada and around the world. Municipalities are financially constrained to alleviate this crisis, and the private sector does have a role to play. We need more public-private partnerships to address the problems of housing as well as climate financing. Urban+Future is an impact investment firm that envisions pioneering a development platform for housing in Canada and the world, aligned with Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, with sound and sustainable financial strategies. We have been looking closely at the application of blockchain technology and impact tokens that present great potential in terms of mobilizing investments and resources towards the Sustainable Development Goals. The International Institution for Sustainable Development, or RISD, published a very interesting report on the application of impact tokens which operate on the blockchain technology with the objective of creating investment opportunities with positive social and environmental impact. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so IASD published a very interesting report on the application of impact tokens which operate on the blockchain technology with the objective of creating investment opportunities with positive social and environmental impacts in support of SDGs. Impact tokens can be tracked on the blockchain system, which enables the users to see how the transactions are made and where they're going. Such a system helps create a transparent environment which fosters trust between all parties. The blockchain technology also has much to offer in terms of promoting financial and social inclusion, which are aligned with the goals of Urban+Future, to create a trustworthy, progressive development and real estate delivery models that are adaptable for housing programs across Canada and globally. We are currently exploring the idea of building our own blockchain system to create a system that will enable us to support the realization of SDGs while achieving financial and social inclusions. We hope to be able to share more information and development news regarding our blockchain at the UEF4 in October. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's important what you mentioned, Masood, that blockchain system is indeed getting more important also when it comes to development of distributing aid and support to areas where people need to be getting it, from the government level. So the meeting today, actually, what there were 3 hours, what it has focused mainly on, I want to summarize what everybody has said. If I want to sort of, say in a few sentences, it says, while United Nations is good at, dealing with governments and making all these conventions and agreements and goals, what happens at the local level is what matters. So it is at the local level, at the municipal level, at city level, at the community level that these goals have to be realized. If at all, we have to have it realized at the global level. So we mean to cultivate and empower local ecosystems for urban innovation, frame enabling institutional regulatory environment that promotes the development of an open innovation culture, urban spaces, have we mentioned here, and cross-sectoral multi-stakeholder collaboration between all levels of government. By facilitating citizen participation, something important through different kind of platforms that we have, not the least the blockchain thing we talked about. Yeah, we have to expand the facilities available, transformation of business sector research, science, technologies are important. We also come to understand that development of sustainable development goals are not to be just implemented at the big city levels. It is smaller cities, towns, they play an important role also when it comes to accessing climate finance, which is a difficult thing. That's why I think the cities and municipalities have to be empowered to access climate finance. How that happens has to be discussed. So these are issues that we have to take it up at the Urban Economy Forum to look at urban economy and finance, which is the core of achieving sustainable development goals. It depends on what themes shall be discussed based on your inputs here as speakers. We will take it from here and consult you further in identifying and circling specific issues to be discussed, exchange of practices that we need to have at the Urban Economy Forum's 4th meeting in October 3rd and 4th. And I also thank all of you participants for being here today, despite different time zones and raising important issues that contributed to the enrichment of discussion. And as well as to thank Ozan and the rest of the Secretariat for putting up this program as our journey towards Urban Economy Forum continues in the next few months. In the meantime, let me also wish you all a great World Environment Day, which is on the 5th of June, which is very much linking up with what you have been discussing today. Thank you very much indeed. And we wish you a great day and great week ahead of what is left of it. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks again. Does anyone else want to make any concluding remarks? Otherwise, let me thank you.
Krishna, maybe just if we all turn on our cameras quickly, we can take a photo with those of us who are remaining.
Okay.
Nice photo for our Twitter here.
Yes, Edmundo, iPhone, Mona, everybody.
Yes, come online. We'll tag you. We'll tag
I'm
you.
trying to.
Give everyone maybe five seconds here, at least till Edmundo.
So just 1 second, I'm having difficulty. Yes.
There we go. There we go. Okay, everyone smile.
Yes, Kumaresh, yeah.
All right. Let me do a couple more here. I'm getting a phone call here.
Good day, yes.
Okay.
Lovely.
Okay. Awesome.
Lovely.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
Yeah, have a good evening or afternoon, wherever you are.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone.
Bye.
Great.